have men's radio. The place where men and women really speak. Oh man, what a show. It's men's radio. This crazy show is on 3 times a week. Now Russ and Phil are there to help with all your cares. We laugh, we cry, we talk like grown-ups do. But if you're sad and low, it won't cost you no dough. Men's radio, that's the place for you. With Russ, Kane, and Phil Dave.
It's Friday. Hey.
You're excited because you actually have a job.
No, I'm excited because it means I get to have some holler.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. This is Men's Radio Station, mensradiostation.com. See, I didn't even bother to say www because I'm so down with the kids. Yeah, get me. You can listen to us, of course, there on our website. You can download our app and listen to us anywhere you like, in the car, doing your shopping, going into the kitchen, making your holler with Phil, whatever you want to do. You can hear us look at us on Twitter. You can see us on Facebook, of course, on my Facebook page and the main Facebook page for Men's Radio Station. It goes out live. And best of all, on our very own YouTube channel, which is, of course, Men's Radio Station. Just go to YouTube, put in Men's Radio Station, up we come. All the past shows are there. Listen to them. You can watch them at your leisure. If there's something you particularly want to see, one of the subject matters or one of the guests, just go back, click on. It's there all the time. And we don't have an expiry period. I've never understood that when they say, this will be up for X days. The hell with that. It's up there in perpetuity. Come and watch us. And it's there as your resource anytime you want. Hit the like button, smash the subscribe button, and there you go. You'll be rocking away.
That's all we've got time for today's show. It's been a great one. Thank you very much indeed for tuning in.
It's called Pushing the Brand. It's something that you probably don't know about. I just want to explain why I do it, because I don't do it just for the good of my health. I do it so that we can be of use to people some of the time.
Now,
not all of the time. Do I need to explain my T-shirt today to everybody?
I think you should explain your T-shirt, and then we're going to dive straight in because we've had a message from Chrissy that I want to read out. So go for it. What's the T-shirt?
Oh, no. Go and read out the thing then. Go on,
okay.
My T-shirt can wait, Boysicle.
Chrissy does say, "Hi boys, I'm still here. Had not nice news yesterday. I cried all night.
Oh no.
I'm going to say didn't want to be here anymore. Today is better." Realize,
Chrissy, do you want to phone us?
Just have to accept the situation. Get better soon, hopefully.
Is this I am suspecting is her daughter, or is it her son? I know that this isn't going to be good, is it? Chrissy, if you want to phone us, you can phone us 0203 290 4411. You can just phone us and talk to us if you want to, Chrissy. That's what it's all about.
And obviously, Chrissy, if you don't, we don't.
Of course, it's entirely up to you. So, those are much more important than me farting around discussing my T-shirt. That's just me relaxing. But Chrissy, that's horrible.
Well, Chrissy, obviously, we wish you sort of all the best as can be. So just
and that's like life from Spain. So. Trouble is international, right? Greetings to one and all. Men's Radio Station, where men are really heard. That's because Dave Sleet and I are cooking up a little something that I think you're going to like. Have a great day. Thank you. I speak to Dave Sleet a lot at A&A, and what an interesting man he is. Anyway, we're cooking up something that we're pretty excited about. So there we are. Ed Grossman. Howdy, and happy Freitag.
Indeed.
Yeah. Morning all.
Lisa Jane says good morning both. And Emma Webb said morning all.
Hello. And Jules Silverman, she who's what is she? She's a matchmaker, make me a match. Find me somebody very, 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 very wealthy. Jules Silverman, that's you. Isn't it dreadful when people say I just don't want to be here anymore? Christ. Hello, everybody. So Sen Monroe, busy making 28 billion films. Lisa Janes, I rang the boys and it really helped. Oh, Lisa, thank you very, very much. Well, thank you for the boys. In its wider sense. I mean, Phil fits into that category.
Hardly.
I think my ship has sailed in that department, but I don't really care. Thank God for that. You see, this makes me, and don't do one of you taking the pisses. This makes me actually very emotional. When one of our listeners, someone who's been with us since day one, and says, "Thanks, Sam," because Sam said it, so he was sorry. And everyone, thank God for this show. It actually makes my life have some sort of meaning. It really does. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you. When we started all of this off,
it's very nice to hear that, and I said it why, because when you're this side of the microphone, it's very easy and very, I think, forgivable to think like this. That if once in a while no one says anything, you're starting to think, "Am I becoming pointless?" It's almost like this paranoia. It's not radio paranoia kicks in.
That's just you, Phil.
It's most certainly not. Because I speak to other presenters, I promise you.
Do you think that?
No, I know.
I think just having a good time. I think having a good time as well. That's an important thing. But the whole remit of men's radio and women's radio, and we got, I've been cooking up a lot of plans. The way that we want to take it forward is exactly that. Summarized and encapsulated is in just one comment from a listener. Thank God for this show. We want to do. We just want to be here to help. That's the point. That is the point. We don't do news. We try to stay away from politics. It's not easy when they're trying to kill you, but there you go.
I was going to say, we don't stay away from politics as much as we probably should, but still.
I think we should get dived. Well, it all comes back to mental health, and good luck if you're living in the Luton area this weekend. What the hell is going on? We know where this is going to end, and it's affected my mental health. That's for damn sure. Lisa Janes, I was in a very dark place, and you helped me. Well, thank you, Lisa. Look, and I just want to make it clear, and I'm speaking on behalf of Phil, and he won't mind in this. We are not experts. We are not trained. We're broadcasters. We're just human beings. So if we've helped you, that's fantastic. But we don't pretend to be experts. We're not doctors. We're not counselors. We're not therapists. We're not psychiatrists. But if we can signpost you, then our job is done. And if we can just lift your mood a little bit, then our job is done. But that's it. But please be aware, we never pretend to be experts in the psychiatric and counseling area. That is not what we do. And it would be very wrong.
Barry J. Allen says, "Morning all."
Yeah, that's good. That is good. Alexander Lichtenfeld, she has the asymmetric hair and huge glasses the size of saucepan lids. Sending hugs to you, Chrissy. That's nice. Veronica Curran, who I know loves the ABC of CBD that I do every week with the fantastic Ollie Mammon. I love that show. Good morning. It's the fantastic chat we enjoy, guys. Well, bless you. Thank you, Veronica.
Now, Chrissy says that she...
Oh, can I link this? Can I just link this for a second? Of course. Sorry, because I just said that Veronica loves the ABC of CBD, which goes out live every Thursday at 6 with Ollie Mammon and his guests. He's a force of nature. Changed my life a little bit, has Mr. Ollie Mammon. And Barry says, Barry J. Allen, MRS, that's us, gave me good advice about CBD oil. Everybody, including Chrissy Holt out in Spain, who has listened to the ABC of CBD, got some of the products, given them a go. Fantastic results. And that's there you go. Sorry, you were saying, Philip?
No, I was just going to say that Chrissy has said that she would phone, but she's still a little bit upset, so maybe
I get that. Paul Claridge says women's and men's radio stations and the listeners are a community, a family. I never thought we'd do that, but it seems to be what's happened, which is just phenomenal. And Chrissy then adds to that and sort of it's an affirmation. That is the thing. Everyone cares on here. And they do. And we do. Look, there is enough programs out there, these so-called watchdog shows, and they don't give a flying shit. They couldn't care less. It's a gig. They get the money, the agents, they don't care if they're helping people or not. Maybe some do, but a lot of them really don't. It's a gig. They would be doing anything. They'd be doing the Masked Singer if it paid the bills. It doesn't matter to them. But we do care, and what is beautiful is that the audience here do care about each other in a very uncaring world.
Come to think of it,
Yeah, go on.
you say they don't give a flying
Yeah, I do.
And I'm just thinking, I've never actually
Why are
seen
you
one.
bouncing up and down?
Oh, because I'm
you got
jolly
piles. You got piles on you today.
No, it's very jolly today.
Oh, okay.
No, I was going to say that I've come to think about it, I've never seen one fly.
You never had my cousin Cyril's cassoulet. If my cousin Francie is watching now, she will be falling off her kitchen stool. Martin Allen, this is a really interesting point. Martin Allen.
I see what you did there. Kitchen stool. Anyway.
Oh, God, I didn't even think of that.
Martin Allen.
Phil, I didn't even see that one coming. Okay, let's pull ourselves together. Like a couple of twerps. Martin Allen, come on, you're the professional. Come on, I could walk in a large crowd of people I know, yet feel all alone. That is very, very common, Martin. But being a part of Men's Radio has become my light, my family, to help me walk into the light. Oh my God, I'm a bit overwhelmed with that. There's a horrible thing, and I went through it many, many, many years ago. And the psychological term for it is witnessing. And what it is, the best that I could describe it is that you think you're watching everything through a sort of thick window. And even though you're there in the room, you're not. You're kind of somehow outside and you're watching the whole thing take place. And I got to tell you, it's awful because you don't feel engaged with anything at all.
It's sort of like an out-of-body experience.
Yes, and it lasts for ages. It's not like a couple of minutes. I'm talking like months or years of it. It's ghastly. And the other thing that often goes hand in hand with that, and I wonder if Martin would agree or not, is you always want to be somewhere else. You think, I don't want to be here. I want to be X. And then you get to X, I don't really want to be here either. I want to be. It takes a long time to work through that. That is not simple stuff. It's fairly grim. But it is, I don't really do large events anymore.
Does anyone?
No, but you get invitations. I tell you why I say that, because I always was going to all these charity dinners and things like that. I know I won't do that again.
Oh, I
really couldn't face it.
Oh, I would. The dinner's fabulous.
They're not fabulous. They're like rubber chicken. The thing with charity dues, I'd rather just give the money, because to be honest with you, after 20 minutes, I always want to go home. Say hello to my pals, have a bit of a laugh, but then I want to go home after 20 minutes. Same as weddings, by the way. It's always the same with me. 20 minutes. That was lovely. Thanks very much. I want to go home now.
That will save me a few bob one day.
What? You have to expand that. What do you mean? Oh, you mean you won't invite me?
Weddings, yeah. I was just saying that was.
What, you got news? What, should I be buying a hat? Do I need to find a dog sitter for Ebony? What's the deal? What's going on here?
I think we've got a little way to go before that's a problem. But
yeah, I mean, try and meet someone first. At least have a cup of tea before we're planning the wedding. This is you get ahead of yourself. You got ahead of yourself.
But hang on,
you're planning the menu, and then you think, wait a minute, I've got to find someone to marry.
No, hang on. I am a forward planner, excuse me. Now, look, we've got very exciting.
Don't you think that finding someone first is more important than what the starters should be on the menu? Just saying.
Maybe for starters. Hey. We've got some very exciting guests coming up in just a moment's time.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Now, loads of guests on a Friday. We always do have.
Yes, we do. We've got packed.
Particularly excited at the prospect of speaking to, can you believe I'm saying this? Henry Blofeld. Yeah, as in
Henry freaking Blofeld, the Henry Blofeld.
Yeah.
And
OBE, of course.
Yep.
And
Zandra Rhodes.
It's
just great, isn't it? Isn't it just great? I saw the opportunity and I thought, two of my absolute heroes, and I know that Phil loves them too. And I never thought we'd be getting this level of guest. Henry Blofeld, the cricketing god, one of the greatest commentators of all time, seriously. And Zandra Rhodes, one of the most acknowledged and respected designers of all time, on our show together. And it's talking about a subject which is very, very key to everything. We've spoken about it a lot, and I was just thrilled. And I said, yes, please, can we have them? The way that people of age, you get to a certain point and you're thrown under the bus. You know it. I know it. Phil's nowhere near there. So there we are.
So we're hopefully in just a moment's time. We're obviously
I'm very excited. I really am psyched for that.
Hopefully, with a bit of luck, technology will be on our side. So far, I'm just putting it out there, not, but hopefully technology will be on our side.
I'll be so pissed. Paul Endicott, he of the 60s tours. If you haven't seen his stuff, I'm giving him a free plug. He doesn't advertise with us or anything. You should do, Paul. Be right on your target audience. But he does great thing called 60s tours. Look him up. Can't wait to hear from Blowers. Absolutely. I'm with that, says Ed Grossman. Morning, everyone, says Diane Taylor. Back to Lisa Janes. This is exactly what I mean. The show is about caring, laughter, connecting people together. You start laughing, we start laughing. Be proud, guys. No, pride is not. It's weird you say that. And Phil's the same. I'm never proud of anything that I've ever done. I acknowledge it, but I'm never. Pride is not something I'm not capable of it, actually. Barry J. Allen, can I just thank you both for playing my song? It makes my day too. That's quite fun. Michael Verby, you're absolutely right. Witnessing, Michael from Leeds, God knows what he's doing in Leeds. God knows. It's a form of depression. Absolutely right. Yeah, part of depression is this whole witnessing thing, which is not. Which is both exhausting and it really cheeses you off. Diane Taylor, love and light to Chrissy. Yep, absolutely so. David Wimble, do you know what we haven't said this week? We haven't even mentioned Deluxe Rate. I blame you. No, wrong way.
You blame me.
There we are. I got it the wrong way. It's interesting with mirrors. I blame Phil Dave. David Wimble, the grand fromage of Deluxe Radio and Radio Waves, at which you can also hear us. Morning, chaps. Good to hear and see you again. The media these days really do not care at all. You're right there. The whole of the BBC is completely stuffed. It's all about celebrity, and the news is beyond awful. You're right. They give their own. Oh, you see, you're speaking my language, Mr. Wimble. They give their own interpretation of the news and do not report. This is it. That's why I don't watch the news. I read it, and I don't need you. Thank you. I'm over 21, as we all are. I don't need you to tell me. Go on.
Now, I'm thinking, I don't think we'll be able to see them, but we may well be able to hear.
No, you're kidding. We've got to see them.
So, well, we've got to ask them to turn their webcam on. That's not my fault. But
what's the point? Yeah, thinking, gosh, I've said that already. When in fact, it was the last broadcast. I do. Yes.
Hello.
Oh, Sandra.
Hello.
Hello. We are beyond excited.
We can't see you, but we can certainly hear you. How are you both?
Oh, very, very well. I'm lucky. I'm here with Henry, who's in a wonderful orange shirt and a gorgeous, gorgeous scarf, and I'm in yellow.
As wonderful as your. What do you call what you're wearing?
What do you call it? Buttercup yellow with flowers all over it.
What do you call the garment? Is it?
Oh, it's a sort of trouser suit.
Well, she calls it Terry. Very good. But what actually, if I went into a shop and said I want one of those, what would I describe it as?
It's a yellow crepe jumpsuit printed with brilliant yellow, blue and green flowers.
You give me ideas. I've never had a jumpsuit in my life.
Henry, I think it's time to start. I think you should. There's plenty of places in Soho. Look, I'm in Soho tomorrow if you want to hook up for a drink. There's plenty of places there. Just go and say, hello, I'm Henry Blowfield and I'd like a jumpsuit, please.
I might get something I didn't expect.
Oh, you will. Yeah, you will. Guarantee when you take it home.
I dare say in Soho you can sneeze and you get something you don't expect, to be honest.
Before we kick off, there's something that I've always wanted. First of all, I never say this to our guests, but you two, in your completely separate fields, are two of my absolute idols, and you have been for years. And I'm thrilled you're on Men's Radio.
Well, we're thrilled to be here.
No, you really are. You know, and what you do is incredible. Now, Henry, something that absolutely stunned me, and I've been always never thought I'd get the chance to ask you. Ian Fleming wrote his villain named after your family.
Named after my father. Ian, yes. I'll tell you the story. I mean, it's a very good story. Ian, I was at Goldeneye's house in Jamaica, and he said to me before lunch one day, he said, I don't think I ever told you how Ernst Stavro Blofeld came into being. And I said, no, you didn't. And he said, I had dinner at home one night in London, which he didn't often do. And I started after dinner a new book, which was published as Thunderball, and I wanted the name of a baddie. And I couldn't think of one. I went to bed scratching my head, which isn't always the best way of getting to sleep, and still couldn't think of one. Woke up in the morning and with a blank mind, went off to my club in a taxi at 11:30, sank gratefully into a leather armchair, picked up the membership list, and went through it from looking for a baddie. He said, when I got to the B's, I was gobsmacked by a phalanx of 3 Blofelds. And in his own words, he said, I slammed the book shut, gave a yelp of delight, ordered the pint of champagne, and never looked back. And so that's how Ernst Stavros began.
It is an extraordinary tale. I know you're on a rush, but on my debut novel, I called the hero Nick Gold only because he's the son of Johnny Gold, who used to own the Tramp nightclub in Germany.
Indeed, I remember Johnny Gold. I met him many times.
It was a lovely man, and Mrs. Gold as well, as it so happens.
I can't remember how many times he threw me out, but there we are.
Well, I think the answer to that, Henry, is not enough.
Now,
Good man. What are you doing this evening? Yes, I know.
Might I suggest that you two are here because I think this is, frankly, with you two, this is something we already know anyway, but you are here to put a positive redefinition on aging. Now, that sounds really quite patronizing, but it's absolutely not, because I wholeheartedly agree with this. I'm so fed up of everyone talking about aging as some sort of thing we've got to fear. It's something that we have to live in fear of and dread happening. And the number of times I have people say to me, oh, do yourself a favor, don't get old. What a ridiculous sentence. There's some things that are beyond our control, and I believe that life is there for embracing. What do you two think?
Well, I think both of us don't even accept it. I don't think of age. I just think of myself as myself. And I'd say 3/4 of the people I'm with are people that I could be either their mother or their grandmother. But we don't notice any age difference at all.
I agree with that absolutely entirely. I spend an awful lot of time talking to people who are younger than me, and I'm firmly convinced they're the same age as me. And I really don't sort of look at people and sort of think, my goodness, they're young, I must adopt a new approach, or they're old and I must adopt a new approach.
Never think about it.
No. Absolutely not. And one goes on with one's old enthusiasm, and I'm lucky, and Sandra's lucky. Sandra's wonderful. The energy she brings to it all, apart from the skill that she still manages to produce, that is absolutely amazing. Yeah. And it's a joy. You should see her now. Look in her yellow. She's looking absolutely magnificent.
And he's in his orange, so we dress up. We dress up for the radio.
She's looking slightly mystified. Not quite sure what I'm going to say next, but there we are.
I have to say, the fact that they say that with age comes respect, but you both sort of gain my respect anyway. Zandra, because I absolutely love the quirkiness, and Henry, why the heck you're not Sir Henry, I've no idea, but Henry,
exactly.
For me,
chic.
Oh, good heavens! We're talking about things like that.
No, we should. Because
I think it's missing. But what
let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, because one of the things I've often said is we live in a sort of Logan's Run world where you remember the film Logan's Run. They got to 30, they were all killed. They thought they were being reborn. In fact, they were just being killed because anybody over 30 with Peter Ustinov came in it, and they've never seen an old person before. And everything seems to be skewed towards very, very young, as though nobody over 35 has any use whatsoever. And I rail against it. So when I saw this was your subject, that's why I embraced it so readily. Do you agree with that?
I don't think of age whatsoever, and I'm with people who I could be their grandmother. And I just think of us all as equals. And I think that this is the whole thing that's fabulous about the Goldster lectures, is the fact that we're talking to people. Young people could watch it as well, but old people to say, look, you don't have to be old. You can do all these sorts of things and be involved, and you can be interested in things, and you can do things, and it makes no difference what your age is.
Now,
well, I agree with that. I mean, I've got one thought which perhaps I shouldn't express, and I'm not certain about this, and so that's why I may be treading on thin ice. But everyone talks about wokeness these days. I'm not quite entirely sure about what wokeness is. But does wokeness mean that you sort of never get old, or does it mean that you only deal with people who aren't old? Therefore,
no, it means you hate everybody on the planet. Basically, Henry, that's what it means.
If
you
I
just
may
hate everybody.
If I may suggest, wokeness has got very old very quickly, but even so, it's still going, sadly. But might I suggest that sort of as far as age is concerned, what I was going to try and sort of just briefly throw in before is that they often sort of say that with age, commands a certain element of respect, which sadly I'm not convinced does exist anymore. And I just wondered sort of from your perspective, before we absolutely find out about these Gold Star lectures, which is what you're here to talk about, is whether or not that you sort of think that the word respect has sort of changed its meaning and this sort of automatic acquirement of respect as one gets older.
I think respect is absolutely essential. And I think Sandra and I have both got old in terms of years, or older, but we both come to life at the present with a huge experience. And experience has taken us in the direction in which we have gone, which is still to attack life as we've always done, not as though we were young, as we've always done. And I mean, there may come a moment when we can't attack life quite as we do at the moment. But I tell you what, if that moment does come and I find myself confined to a wheelchair or in bed, I shall still attack the life that I'm then able to live.
I can't see how it will stop you. I mean, you know what I mean? We just have to, if obstacles come, we're prepared to jump over them, which we've always done. I mean, it makes no difference.
That's a very good way of putting it. Yes, absolutely.
Is it so much an attitude of mind, though? Because you can meet people who are, in terms of age, young, and yet they're very old and kind of dull. I've always thought, and I'd love to know where you two stand on this, that it's an endless curiosity of what's around the next corner that drives me.
I agree with that absolutely entirely. I've done quite a number we have of question and answers this morning, and I've said many times, life to me is a series of right-angle bends, and I do want to see around them. Just occasionally, there's a brick wall in front of me. I want to see over the top of it.
You'll then do a U-turn.
I'm not very good at U-turns.
Then you'll bend the other way.
I suggest he's not a government minister. Let's have a little more respect for him.
That's very good. That's very good.
But I think enthusiasm is terribly important too. And I mean, I've always dealt with tomorrow and not yet. And I don't ever deal with yesterday any more than I ever feel sorry for myself, because that is the most unproductive emotion in the world. Never feel sorry for yourself. It doesn't get you anywhere. Just be cheerful, get on with it, and look for the optimistic side of life. And if you're prepared to do that, I think you'll find it.
Yeah, there's so many things to do. That's why it's so fabulous with Goldstar.com that people can look and see. They can do exercises, but they don't have to do exercises. They can look at books, they can do drawings, and they can all participate and see the other people participating, so they don't have to feel that they're the only ones doing it.
This is right, and I think there's a certain sort of solidarity in bulk, by which I mean that if there are lots of people, they don't feel self-conscious about it, and that's a good thing too. But what is so wonderful with Goldstar, when you're watching people who are actually listening to you, and you suddenly see them lean forward a little bit, and you do that instinctively, don't you? If you're interested in something and you want to hear it a bit better, and you feel then that you've hooked them. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Totally. Now, sadly, this is really sadly, we're flat out of time. We have to let you go. We know we have to. But before we do, if anyone wants any more information, it's Goldstar, GOLDSTER.co.uk. That's the website. Before you go, I have a favor to ask you two, and I'm pleading with you. Will you please do a podcast series or radio show or something?
Oh, you two, yes, it would be fabulous.
We'd love to.
It would be great fun, wouldn't it, Elsie?
I know, it'd be wonderful.
You two are together are magic.
Oh.
Absolute blooming magic. You really are.
Well, I can't tell you, when we did our trip to India, it was just so wonderful to know I'd meet Henry, who I'd been listening to for years.
Ditto Sandra Rhodes.
Henry,
it was all very good news.
We look forward to seeing you in your one-piece jumpsuit very soon, but make sure it's bright yellow.
Oh, dear. We love the pair of you. Thank you so much. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
That's the amazing Henry Blofeld OBE and Dame Zandra Rhodes there talking to us about Goldstar, which Goldstar is a membership platform, by the way. And for more information, it's at goldstar.co.uk. Wow. I'm being deadly serious when I said they have to do some sort of podcast.
Oh, they should. They absolutely should. There's so many things that come out of that. There's so many things. Number one, that not everything in the world is youth, for which I blame Janet office cleaner, and all her nonsenses, because it was just trash mostly. A lot of it, some of it was good, but so much of it was garbage. Masquerading as good. The second thing is that energy, that enthusiasm, that zest for life, that lust for life. It's so damn inspiring. It's so good. It's so good.
I was saying a little earlier on to them, or started saying about how much respect, where respect comes from. And I was saying that I have respect for Dame Zandra because of the quirkiness, that she's not afraid to sort of just stand out from the crowd and be different. Very much sort of what I've done a lot of my life. And the reason why I have respect for Henry, Sir Henry, damn it. Come on, if someone's
come on, it should be Sir Henry. If you can make Elton John a Sir, you can make Henry.
You can make Henry Blofeld a Sir. So right, I was going to say that. So the reason why that sort of the same goes for Henry is because I just think anyone who makes me sound common, I have the most immeasurable amount of respect for.
He just sounds fantastic. He could read anything. He could read the menu from Nando's, and it would sound like Henry V.
What a voice!
Two.
What a voice!
Once more into the peri peri chicken. Once more, you know. A man asleep in their beds will curse themselves for not being there for half a wing. Chrissy Holt, who's going through it and a half, says that was cheering.
Good.
Well done. And Paul Endicott says, miss so much young Blower's mellifluous voice and laughter on TMS Chess Match Special. What a legend. Totally. What a legend there. It was exciting getting them. I never thought. You see, one of the things I said, we were joking like it should be Sir Henry Blofeld. If you're Elton John, I'm just picking him as an example. I'm neither here nor there about Elton John. I don't really care anymore. He cares about me. But hang on, let me just say this. Here's a guy getting paid millions and millions and millions for doing what he likes doing, and then you think, oh, have a knighthood. I'm not entirely sure how that kind of works. So I'm not picking on him. It could be anybody.
Might I suggest, I'm just putting it out there, Sir Lewis Hamilton. I'm just saying.
Well, I am exceptionally pissed off with Lewis Hamilton, and I will tell you why. Because opposite the Soho Whiskey Club was a wonderful little eatery called Herman Z German with a Z. Herman Z German. It wasn't really up Phil Street, but it did the most fantastic bratwurst and sausages, and it was just simple, plain fare with German beer, Germans. It was just great. And it's gone. In its place is some hokey-cokey, vegan, whatever, right? Backed and invested by Lewis Hamilton. Sod it. I'm not going now because he took away Herman's a German, which I really loved going there. It was great. Anyway, there we are. Alexander Lichtenfeld says this, aging. I have more energy at 58. I'll be around in 20 minutes, Alex. I have more energy at 58. I think it would kill me, to be honest. I have more energy at 58 than most of the younger people I meet, work with, and work out with at the gym.
Good work.
Ed Grossman. Ed, you could be in with a chance. You mean 38? Get you, Ed.
I see what he did.
Silver-tongued devil. You're moving in there on the Alex. What is this? Oh, no, what is this? Ed Grossman. I don't understand that, and I'm not sure. I've had such a lovely time with Henry Blofeld. I don't want to do anything that's negative. You can tell me about it privately. I'm not sure what it is. So I don't want to walk into that particular little minefield because I won't be expecting it.
Okay. What's coming on the rest of today's show? I think we should really.
I think that would be both professional and helpful.
Unlike announcing that's what we're about to do.
Yeah, as opposed to, hey, everybody, here's what's coming up in the show. Just tell me what's coming up in the show.
This is exactly. Narrating your way through radio is the most fundamental.
The worst thing is, hi, everybody in Radio Land.
Oh, police.
Have you ever been listening to the radio and you're driving along and, you're you're traveling, so you're listening to local radio, and some of it's lovely and some of it is just pants. And they go, "Hey, everybody!" No, not everybody. You're talking to one person.
One person.
One person. It's a very personal medium. It's not television.
Which is
And when you hear people say, "Hey, everybody in Radioland," I'm not in Radioland. Actually, I'm one person, and I'm listening to your show. Kindly don't group everybody together.
Well, allow me to tell you what is coming up.
Please do, young fellow.
Well, later at midday, we're going to be meeting an empowerment coach.
Yep. Do I need to change? Should I put
No.
on a suit or something?
Well, I'm not entirely sure, but all I know is that Jay McKeek has got the most impressive hair that
Oh, yeah. I mean, what the hell?
So we'll be meeting Jay at around midday today and finding out ultimately what an empowerment coach actually does. Very impressive, though, really. Sort of, I've been reading into his work. I'm going to sort of give a little bit away now because I really want you to stay tuned to this because I think it's important. He's actually doing work to help empower children and the next generation to, at a simple level, deal with life. That's what he's trying to do, and I think that's an incredible thing.
So no big task.
No, oh no, piece of cake, absolutely. He's bored most of the time.
Yeah.
Then at 1 o'clock this afternoon, we're going to be
deal with life. Okay. And then tomorrow, I'm going to invent a time machine.
Well, quite.
Morning before in the afternoon, I discover whether there's God or not. Go on. Go.
And at 1 o'clock, we are going to meet Joshua Fletcher. Now, Joshua is not only a psychotherapist, but he also runs a counseling service called the Panic Room. And I really, really like the concept of this. Just actually, again, I'm totally and utterly not giving too much away. Just trust me. Don't miss it, please. 1 o'clock this afternoon, Joshua Fletcher. Trust me, really, really interesting guests. And then to round it all off at 1:30 today, in traditional fashion, we'll be speaking to the lovely Chantel Rickards, who is somewhere out there in the ether. Is she still
out. She's been posting pictures that I have. I don't do jealousy. Jealousy is not something. I'm not a jealous person. I'm really not. If people have made a success of their lives, fantastic. It's because they've usually worked their asses off to do it. But she's in Colorado, and she's in a place I've wanted to go my entire life, ever since I used to watch those John Ford Westerns, sitting with my dad, watching in black and white on a Sunday afternoon. And, the rock formations.
They're stunning.
Oh, my God. They are. I don't know, Phil, if it's possible for us to at some point put the pictures up. She's been. I have no idea.
The only reason that I don't think we can on here is because I don't know how copyright will work. But what we could do is we could share them to the Facebook page on Men's Radio. We'll try and do that. Can I right? So you've reminded me there about something with jealousy, and I wasn't necessarily going to bring this up, but actually, I think it's quite important. No, because I'd be interested to get your thoughts, because I'm a little bit worried how sometimes words can be misconstrued as jealousy when there was never any sort of jealousy underlying in the first place. The other day, I was speaking to a colleague, and I happened to notice that sort of where I work is very much surrounded by television screens because it's all a newsroom environment anyway. And I noticed that on one of the national breakfast programs, the chap I used to work with at the BBC years ago, used to work with. And I thought to myself, I said this out loud. I said, my God, where did I go so wrong? I said,
better know who it was.
Here's me in the wee small hours, just pressing buttons and all right, don't get me wrong. I genuinely do love what I'm doing.
A little bit more than pressing buttons, but go on.
Yeah, anyway, but here's me doing what I'm doing in the wee small hours. And this person's got onto national television on a primetime show doing stuff that ultimately, I knew he loved doing, which was more reporting and talking about where did I go wrong? And actually, my colleague turned round to me and said, "Oh, sounds like
a coffee."
No, turned around and said, "You're a bit." No, he did not say that. Turned around and said, I'm sensing a little bit of jealousy there. But I swear to you, I didn't mean
to. It was about you. I'm going to interpret, see if I've got this right. See if I've got this right, Philip. It wasn't about him. It was about you. In other words, you weren't being critical of him. You were like, good for him. And you were being self-critical of yourself, because I know that's how you are.
Yeah,
Am
but
I
no,
right?
that's exactly what it was. Is I thought to myself, wow, you know, it just goes to maybe I was thinking to myself, I don't know, maybe I haven't worked hard enough, or maybe I haven't done the right work, or whatever it was.
You kiss the right tuchus.
Well, maybe whatever it might be, he was there, and I'm where I am, and I just thought, why? But actually, I realized in hindsight, of course, it sounds like jealousy.
It
And
does.
it's not meant to. I absolutely swear. I genuinely am happy for the guy. I actually think, bravo, that's amazing. But isn't it funny?
But I wonder how this guy, whoever, I wonder how this guy, whoever it might be, he might be thinking, well, I'm only doing reporting. Why aren't I the main anchor? I don't know what show it is. He might be thinking, why aren't I the main anchor of this show? Why aren't I Piers Morgan or Susanna Reid, or why aren't I blah, blah, blah? Could be. You never know.
No, totally. And I think that's a sign of fierce ambition, is when someone is never happy with what they got. Because believe me, the number of times it's incredibly flattering that I've had people say to me, do you know, I'd kill to do what you do, or I'd kill.
They would. But they would, Phil. You know that.
Crosses my mind. Never crosses my mind, because so focused am I on this sort of the end goal, whatever the end goal looks like, that I just don't think that where I am now is ever good enough. And that's I actually think that's
okay. But that's okay. It's okay. If there's nothing wrong with being ambitious. If you're going to step on everybody's heads to get there, then you're complete shit, and it is wrong.
No,
but being ambitious, having a vision. I've got a vision for men's radio. That doesn't, so am I ambitious? Yes, but there's a goal for that.
No, I'm all for ambition. That's not. I don't think that's what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, don't you think how interesting and how damaging it can be that with that ambition, it comes to the detriment of recognizing one's own successes? And I'm
totally guilty. Yeah, I'm with that. I'm with that. I totally understand that. Totally understand that. Because I get people saying things, and I look at them, and I have no idea. I genuinely have no idea who the hell they're talking about, because it sure as hell doesn't feel like me. And I only think of all the things. I mean, I'm not a half glass empty. I'm not at all. But I never think of all the good stuff. I always think of, I should have done that. Why the hell did I? And I beat myself up about it. I'm the first to admit it. Well, you shouldn't be running a mental health radio station if you're not going to be honest. And it's true. 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm thinking, why the hell did I? What a stupid man. Why did I do that? That was so stupid. And I get furious with myself. And of course, as Henry and Zandra said, you can't undo the past. There's nothing you can do about it. It's been gone, finished. It's down the toilet. It's
I get that. But isn't it really interesting how age is sort of not only seen as something to fear, but it's also seen, as I think, as some sort of barometer of failures and successes. For example, the number of times I've mentioned this, I'm not going to go on about it again, but just as an example, I never thought at my age I'd still be living at the family home. But that's
you've never mentioned that.
No, but I'm being serious. But that's sort of what it does. Is that age makes me.
Yeah, but that is an obsession with you. You're obsessed with this. It eats you up.
Yeah,
and nobody else cares. I don't mean nobody else cares listening to it. Nobody else is bothered by it.
Of course they're not. I know, but isn't it interesting how sort of we can, as you were talking earlier on about your sort of out of body experience, we can look down on ourselves and forever criticize ourselves and say, this is wrong. This is wrong. What's wrong with you? Why are you doing it like this? Why haven't you done this? But do we ever look in the mirror and say, well done, you've done this?
We never do. We never do, except for people who are psychopaths. We never do. See, that a sociopath, I've worked with a few people who are genuinely sociopaths. And a sociopath has no moral compass at all. They see that everything that they do is right. They've never done anything wrong. And they're just extraordinary and very, very dangerous. And you can work with them very briefly, and then you have to get the hell out of Dodge, because they will suck you into their own world of utter weirdness and madness. And they're just dreadful. But they just think everything they do is fantastic. And it's not. And it's not even cutting corners. It's being absolute crooks. And they don't see it.
But do you genuinely think that people that like that think that they are fantastic? Or do you think that they talk themselves into it?
It's the same thing, because the people that they become are so extraordinary, and rules do not apply to them. Rules don't apply to them, and that way lies chaos, because they cause utter chaos. They cause utter chaos and a lot of misery. A lot of misery too.
What's curious though is they cause emotional chaos. That's what
I mean. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Because it affects feelings in so many ways. It makes people question their own abilities and their own achievements. It also makes people question their actual themselves. They look to someone who's
it's like putting on somebody's glasses that are not your prescription. These are just straight off Amazon, right? Because they're blue light. But it's like putting on somebody else's glasses that have got a prescription for them. You can't see life like they do. It's impossible. You have to walk away. I mean, you have to actually don't walk away, run away. You have to run away from them, because they will just suck you into this awful vortex. Ghastly. And they were business people, by the way. They were just shockers, absolute shockers. No, so we don't. That was a long answer to your question. I don't think enough people pat themselves nicely on the back and say, you know what, you got through today. You did this and did that. No, you didn't find a cure for cancer. No, you didn't climb Mount Everest. And no, you didn't build a rocket and start a colony on Mars. But what you did within your own framework is absolutely fine. And most people don't do that. I get to the end of the day, I get like 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. What the hell have I achieved today? And maybe that's the wrong word. What have I achieved today? Well, I didn't hurt anybody. I mean, you could turn it on its head, couldn't you? Say, I didn't hurt anybody. I didn't cause anybody any harm. If I've helped a couple of people, great. If I haven't, well, did my best. And that's all right. That's kind of all right. I wish I could talk myself into it, but I don't. I think anybody with ambition goes, what have I achieved today? Have I written enough today? How's the book coming? Am I pleased with it? Is it good enough? All these things.
I don't know whether or not the expression actually should be, what have I achieved today? No, not sort of in a disparaging way, but actually checking off sort of what you have done, rather than not in a sarcastic kind of way, like, oh, what have I done today? More like, what have I done today?
But sometimes, and I think it's okay. I think it's okay. I'm kind of talking myself into this, Phil, but I think it's okay to say, what did I do? I went to the chemist. I popped into the post office and got the papers away that I needed to get away, back to whatever it was. I did some shopping. I walked the dog. They're not earth-shattering. They're not earth-shattering things, are they? I wrote a bit of the book. They're not going to change the world, but within the context of of living your life, it's okay. It's not sensational, but it's okay. And maybe that's all right. Maybe that's okay. I don't know. Hello, Roving Phil. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the moment. One thing, you're going to see if your mother's still at home.
Well,
I love the way your mum just kind of makes a guest appearance. She's like the Alfred Hitchcock of radio.
Oh, look, my parcels have arrived. That's exciting.
That's exciting. Maybe we could have another section. What's in Phil's parcels? Having exhaustively mined what's in Phil's we've exhaustively mined the what's in Phil's cupboard today. A competition that really was fairly boring, I thought. I wish I hadn't thought of it. Oh, hello. There's your mum and somebody else. Who's there? Hang on. There's your mum looking saucy in a sort of gilet.
It's my parents. Do you mind?
Well, I couldn't see. We can see Linda. We can see one dog. We can see Linda, who's now running away. Right, let's concentrate on the matter in hand, which is, of course, Breadcam.
Look, you can see Carlo.
Bless. God. Do you know, I swear to God, he looks like you.
Oh, there you go.
Linda's making a guest appearance. Linda, that's a very saucy gilet you're wearing.
She can hear you because it's all through my earphones. Well, she'll be able to hear you in a second. Oh, that's lovely. The dog got excited on me. Anyway, yes, but you can hear it in a delayed reaction. Anyway, so there you go. Anyway, right, so there's Bread Watch. There's Holla for this week. So there you go.
With sesame seeds on top?
That's sesame seeds on top. A little bit hot, potentially. So what we'll do is we'll take some upstairs.
I love that. He's 34 and his mum's saying, be careful, it's hot.
Thank you.
You never stop being a mum, do you?
No, this is
you
very
never stop
true.
being a parent.
Never true. Never true.
You never
So there you
stop.
go.
Doesn't matter if they were running the world. You'd still careful. The bread's hot.
Yeah, well, quite.
So come on, right, let's do the tear test.
Nice
Come on,
to
let's
know.
do the tear. No, I want to do the tear test.
Well, okay,
Linda's been very bold today. What's she got? A thermometer there?
Hang on a second. I'll do the tear
What's
test.
in Linda's hand? Ask
hot.
what's in her hand.
He wants to know what's in your hand. It's a pen.
Okay. All right.
Anyway, okay, so here's test. This is hot.
She was going to test your temperature there for a minute.
Just I won't tell you that she's moved on from old-fashioned methods. Anyway.
Yeah, precisely.
Okay, so here we go. Here's the tear test.
Oh, that's looking good. Oh, that's looking good.
Well, very, very hot. Whew. Right.
Wait for it. Any minute, his mum's going to go, I told you it was hot. Would you listen?
Okay. Right.
He's lucky.
Okay. This is a bit hot. Right. So we'll let it cool down.
Yeah, what a good idea. What a good idea that might be. Dave Sleet. Listen to this, Phil. Dave Sleet says the pen is for scoring the test.
Well, there you go. Anyway, so that was an insight into the downstairs world. Isn't that nice?
Are you bringing some back? Because I want to see you squeezing your mouth. That's the next. That's the next thing.
Should I bring the parcels upstairs as well? Did you want to know what was in the parcels?
I couldn't give a monkey's what's in your parcels. It's none of my concern. Listen. All right, bring the parcels upstairs. Christ, I didn't get this on radio before, do you? Tell me something.
This could be
on behalf of everybody else. Is the K9 used for the color test? Yeah. The dog uses the color. If Carlo doesn't like the bread, it has to go. It has to be destroyed.
It has to go back in the oven.
Oh, Paul Andrews. He's so butch in this sequence each week. So butch.
Well, look, I'd like to see you do better.
Yeah, no, you see, don't react like that. Listen, Paul Andrews. Phil came over because we were doing some technical stuff, and he brought one of the little mini hollers with. And I got to tell you, as much as it pains me, it's absolutely delicious. It was tip top.
Whilst you're singing my praises.
Are you having whiskey now?
Whilst you're singing my praises. No, I'm not having whiskey now. Whilst you're singing my praises. Oh, that was just sitting on my desk. I think I have issues. I'm going to flick back. Hang on.
Yeah, no, the question that Alex has just posed something. You never put butter on it. You just bring it out raw as it is, don't you? And Alex says, I hope you've got lashings of butter. I'm with you, Alex, on that.
To be fair, if given a chance, I probably would put butter on it. But
why don't you put butter on it every week? You just have raw bread.
You say that, but I'm in the middle of a radio show, so it's very hard to sort of take butter.
Because it's not like in the middle of a radio show when we're dealing with mental health that you disappear to the kitchen every week with your mum and your dog and start dicking around with bread. Well, so putting butter on it, that would be a step too far.
You say that, but... Anyway. So, did anyone want to have a guess at what's in the parcels?
Well, can we see the shape of them? All right, we'll play along. All right,
we'll
play along. All right. Okay. Let's see the shape of the parcels, Phil. Well, that's obviously one of your bottles of whiskey.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
It's got to be. It's got to be. It's a bottle, isn't it? It's booze. It's got to be booze.
It's a book. Right.
Well, it's a book, very tall, thin volume with the words "Single Malts I Have Known" by P. Dave.
It's a very thin.
What have we got? Lisa James. That looks delicious. I got to tell you, Lisa, you read that it was delicious. He brought it over. And I thought I'd have to be polite and say it's nice. Right? He's dragged it all across London. It was excellent. I'm actually loving this reality radio show. For God's sake, don't mistake the pitch for the bread. The pitch for the bread. No, you've lost me there, Lisa. The pitch for the... Paul Andrews. I await the YouTube channel. Phil Dave's bakery classes. Yeah, why not? How to Tie a Cravat by P. Dave. Right, what's going on? You're going to read us something.
Okay, so in the parcel today, okay? Oh, you're quite right.
I'm feigning interest, by the way.
Well, I'm
feigning interest.
You're quite right with your analysis. It was some booze. It's one of my favourite whiskies, so that's good.
All right, are we allowed to see it, or is it a secret?
Okay, no, I can get that. I just need to open it. Hang on a second. Don't mind me. Talk amongst yourselves. Hang on.
Well, we do. We're talking amongst ourselves. You see, Ed Grossman, they need cream cheese and smoked salmon. Ed, you're speaking my language. You're talking my language. Oh, Lisa James, don't mistake the pooch for the bread. Can you imagine just getting a little dachshund? This looks good. Just slapping butter on it, cream cheese, bit of smoked salmon, about to take a big. Oh my god!
Is that where the expression sausage roll comes from?
Oh, very good, very good. Yeah. That's it. Here we go. 6:45 a.m. You're talking about bread and how whiskey. Well, this Elizabeth Green. You're living in New York City. New York City. By the way, Elizabeth, your book still hasn't arrived. A book arrived. I got overexcited. It was from America. It's not your book. It's a completely different book, not yours. What have you got? Put it closer. I can't see what it is. Oh, this is your Welsh whiskey thing, isn't it? Yeah, nice.
Lovely. Anyway.
Nice bottle. Nice shaped bottle there.
I thought so. And do you know what's interesting, okay, is that they totally redesigned it a few years ago. It used to look like this, which is okay.
That's all right.
It wasn't amazing.
This is just a bottle.
But now, very striking.
No, that really does look... the light's bouncing off it. Bring the new one up again, because the light's just reflecting off it badly. Yeah, that looks good. Oh, that's a nice shape.
There you go. Anyway, right.
Nice.
Sorry, I'm going to put this one back on the shelf. Hang on.
Yeah, Elizabeth very kindly sent me her book from New York, and she said, "Have you got it? You got it? You got it?" She keeps writing to me. And I go, "I haven't got it." And I go through my post very carefully, and I would know if a book had arrived. Right? It's not the sort of thing that would just slip through the net. And then Elizabeth phoned up. Oh, yes, I signed for it. I didn't. One, you don't sign for a book. You don't sign for Amazon. You don't, right? And secondly, it hasn't turned up. So anyway, look, I'll send it again if you can. Or not. Read it down the phone to me. Read it down the phone. Dave Sleet saying breakfast UK style. Yeah. Holla.
I'm just saying. So might I suggest... the other thing I had in the box, by the way, was this is a sign of the times. I just ordered some more disposable face masks as I was running low. So there you go. And
I have got a stack here. I'm like Boots the chemist. There is a stack of disposable gloves. Hello. And face masks. All that. Just tons of it.
A little stylus. Because a lot of the time when I'm out and about, I'm wearing gloves, you see. I wear gloves when I'm out and about because I don't want to touch anything. I was just for the record.
Especially when he's burgling your house.
I was always a germaphobe at the best of times. So I didn't really fancy the idea of touching anything when it's out and about. So I wear disposable or reusable gloves. Anyway, and I thought, well, this is really tricky. I can't really sort of use the smartphones when I'm doing that. So I bought a little stylus to help me with that. So there you go. That's what's in the box, everybody.
Yeah, see, stylus. I always have a stylus. Andrea Lucas, she's a bit of a sore spoke today. I'll do it one more time because it cuts off the beginning of it.
Thank you, baked potato.
Marvelous. So Andrea Lucas, afternoon. Sorry I'm late. I'm not going to get through this, am I? But a friend of mine's erecting a new barbecue smoker. I got distracted. That is either the best euphemism I've heard for a bit of hanky-panky first thing in the morning from Andrea Lucas, or your friend's actually building a new barbecue smoker.
But
barbecues, the world's biggest waste of time. What is the point of a barbecue?
Couldn't agree more. Go to a restaurant. The good news, and they're not cheap either.
No, I just don't get it.
But you know what, Andy, I've got good news for you. You're in time for the cholera tasting.
Oh, so. Should be thrilled. A barbecue smoker. You're a smoker. Here's a smoker. Now, here's the thing.
I thought you hadn't eaten it.
Barbecues. This is from Ollie. I don't get them. It's just a faff. Cook it in the kitchen, take it out in the garden. What's the point? They always taste terrible. They're never as good as normal. Come around for a barbecue. Really? It's either undercooked, overcooked, cremated, or still moving. It's somewhere between those points. It's just rubbish. And then the faff of the coals and getting the coals, and it stinks of petrol, then it goes out, then it blows. It's just rubbish. It's just, I don't understand it at all.
Was that a song by the Wombles?
What? Remember you're a briquet.
Undercooked, overcooked, somewhere in there.
Undercooked, overcooked, salmonella free. I feel so terrible. I'm off to A&E. I had a burger. It wasn't germ-free. No. So the best thing, if you want to do barbecue, there's the George. I was going to say something else. George Foreman turned out lovely again, isn't it? George Foreman electric thing. Just shove it on that. It's much easier. Faffing around with coals, they don't make it taste any better. It just takes forever to cook. Don't get it.
Now,
yep.
You know what we need, don't you?
But please don't introduce a guest with a mouthful, please.
Excuse me. If you need proof, right. Wait. Says you right. Don't be ridiculous. Anyway, right. What we need here on Men's Radio with Russ, Kane and Phil Day. We are, by the way, live with you until 2:00. Right across Facebook, YouTube and Twitter. And, of course, on Deluxe Radio, Radio Waves, mensradiostation.com and the Men's Radio Station app. Whichever way you are listening or watching us, you are very welcome indeed. We need a bit of empowerment. Now, what does that mean? Hear you cry.
What does it mean? What does it mean?
Well, luckily, there is a person who helps us with this because he is an empowerment coach. He is James.
That's a bit of luck.
And he joins us now. Jay, a very good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey, how are you?
Very well, thanks.
Jay, we're good. We're good here. First of all, loving the hair. The hair.
Yeah, I'm reminiscing about my hair, if I'm honest with you.
It's there you are. Okay. Okay. I've got a way to go, but no, I don't. Okay. Thanks very, very much for joining us. What is the M for? Is that that's a university? What is the M on the?
This is a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles jacket. So the M is for Michelangelo.
Oh, good work. While Russ comes to grips with that, if I may just say, in happier times, there you go.
I was going to pick you up and think, well, we've got a proper intellectual. He's going to represent some fantastic college. No, it's Teenage Mutant Ninja.
No, it's just Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Bloody love it. Absolutely.
And may I say, my childhood heroes they were because of their love of pizza. Wasn't a mad fan of
hilarious.
I wasn't a mad fan of the toppings, but I was a fan of the pizza.
Now, Jay, I got to ask you, I can't help this. In the background's a clock, right? So either you're in, are you in a different time zone or is your clock stopped?
I think it's stopped. Yeah, we don't generally use the clock. So, yeah, I think it's stopped. It doesn't actually. I think the battery ran out.
Okay. All right. I'm just checking because I thought it might have been coming somewhere exotic. So I'm batting 2-0 at the moment. Not a university thing, and you're not in a different time zone. Just checking.
No, coming live to you from South Wales.
Okay. Well, in that case, it's 1958. So the clock has stopped. Right.
If you're in South Wales, they're not
for it. Wait for it. We know what's happening. Wait for it. Wait
if you're in South Wales, have you stumbled across the wonders of Penderyn yet? They're not paying us, but I have to tell you, this is one of the best things to come out of Wales apart from sheep. Honestly,
Shirley Bassey.
Fantastic. Welsh whiskey. Highly recommend.
God almighty. Jay, tell us about yourself, please.
Oh. Right, I'm an empowerment coach. I mainly work with children because I want to teach them all the stuff that we didn't learn when we were younger. I just like to teach children to just be themselves and get this mental health stuff out there and spoke about. And yeah, just that's what I've just in everything to do with just teaching stuff that maybe we didn't learn till we were a bit older. And
like what? What did you wish you would have learned when you were younger that you didn't?
Different topic. The key thing that I love to teach children is emotional intelligence, because that isn't a thing that even most adults I speak to have. So emotional intelligence is key for me.
Could you define what that is, Jay? What? Because we hear it banded around.
Emotional intelligence is learning how to deal with your emotions. Like 3 years ago, when I first come into this field, I didn't know that I could get up in the morning and change my mood. I thought I had to go with that mood. So if I woke up in a rubbish mood, that's how my day went. Now I realize by doing certain things and by the scientific proof of moving your body and changing the posture of your body and the words you use and the things you're doing can actually change your mood. And I didn't know that. So there's lots of simple things.
Can we drill into that a little bit? Because that, you know, if you've hit some magic formula, that would be fantastic. So you wake up, you're in a pissy mood, and you know many people wake up and oh god.
Mm-hmm.
All right, walk us through, if you can, walk us through what would you do to change that mindset and change your mood?
There's various things I do, and obviously these are going to differ for every person. But sometimes I'll go for a walk in nature. That brings back gratitude is key for me. So I have a gratitude journal. So writing down 3 things I'm grateful for is something I do, which when you're being grateful, you can't be sad. It's impossible to be sad while you're grateful. So, and obviously going back to the body posture, so changing your physiology, which just basically means change your body shape. Because if you notice, when people are feeling sad or depressed, their body shape is very closed off and their head's down. Whereas when people may have heard like the superhero pose, when you change your body shape, so you put your head up, your shoulders back, you open up your chest area, that instantly changes your mood. It's called, there's a lady, I think her name's Amy Cuddy. She there's a video on TED Talks. It's really interesting about the superhero pose. And I like to use that with the children because it resonates. But yeah, just see, a lot of this stuff people don't know. And I like to call it the simple things because sometimes it's so simple that people overlook it. Like you would never think by changing your body shape and the words you use, you can actually change your mood. But it is scientifically proven to work.
Well, one thing's for sure, if I see people, you know, who are friends of mine or family and the shoulders and you're looking like that, I always go, put your shoulders back. And I don't do it in a horrible way because it's aging and it's kind of like defeat.
Well, it's also quite bad for the posture as well.
Yeah, it's also rubbish for your back and your shoulders and gives you bad posture and a rounded back, which nobody wants. Some of this, because I've heard about these gratitude journals before, but I'm not being sarcastic, I'm being really serious here, Jay. And I know you don't know Phil and I from a hole in the wall, but trust us, we don't take the mick out of guests. It's not what we do. If you're in a bad mood and you open up, let's say, a journal and you write, I'm grateful for my fabulous beard, I'm grateful for whatever it might, I don't know, my goldfish bowl, whatever it is, okay. Does that really make you feel better, or you just close the journal and think, you know what, I'm still in a bad mood?
I guess for some people that wouldn't, but I've worked really hard to work on my mindset. So some people may need to reach out for some support with their mindset because it does take practice. And yeah, I guess you can say writing 3 things you're grateful for. You may close the book and still have the same issues you had before. But then it's really about working on mindset as well. So there's lots of different things that incorporate into that. But I would, for personally myself, say yes, that does make me feel better.
Okay,
because
that's fair enough.
Where you focus your energy is where you're going to be looking. So if I focus my energy on all the rubbish things in my life, that's all I'm going to see. Whereas if I focus on all the things I'm grateful for, obvious, that's what you're going to see.
Did you catch the beginning of the show? Probably not. Which was probably a mercy for you. So probably a mercy for you. Probably a mercy for you, Jay. But Phil, you missed bugger all. But Phil and I would say, no, I'm just being self-deprecating. Yeah, Henry Blofeld and Sandra Rose. Christ, that's like my career highlight for me. We were saying that we're not kind enough to ourselves, and I don't want to get all Prince Harry about this because that's the last thing on the planet I ever want to do. But we beat ourselves up about stuff we can't undo. And we don't ever say, you know what, that was okay. We could be vaguely pleased with that. Would you agree with that? Is that part of what you do?
I agree, because I don't think people understand how powerful your words are, because the way you're talking to yourself and the inner critic, people like to call it, I call it your chimp brain, because that's, if you've ever read the book, The Chimp Paradox, it's an amazing book about the different parts of your brain, and it's very simply put. But the words you're putting in there is, like I said, what you can see. And I tend to choose my words carefully, because if I get up in the morning and start saying how pissed off I am and all that, that's what your emotion will raise to your words. So your words are very important, in my opinion.
It's the words. Hang on a second, Jake. The words you're saying to yourself are very important. This is really what Phil and I were discussing earlier. How we beat ourselves up for no particular reason, and a lot of people do. A lot of people do.
Look, I guess that what I find baffling, and this is a bit of a revelation to me, if I'm honest with you, is I didn't realize it was possible to have so much control over one's emotions. Because I'll be honest, if I'm in a pretty foul mood, I'll try and tell myself, maybe I'm not taking myself seriously enough, who knows? But I'll try and tell myself, oh, come on, it could always be worse. It never works. For me, anyway. I don't understand.
Do you say it out loud? I'm sorry, Jay, it's not like you're not in the room. Do you say it out loud to yourself, Phil? Because if I get in a really bad, stupid mental state over nothing, over literally usually nothing, I talk to myself and then I hear the words and I think, sod this, I'm moving on now.
I can't say exactly what I say out loud because it's probably not broadcast friendly.
No, I'm the same. I'm effing and blinding like crazy, but it's okay.
At the same time, I just don't believe, and maybe this is where I've been going wrong, but I don't believe I have that much control over my emotion. To actually be able to look in the mirror.
You do, actually.
Just saying you look in the mirror and you just tell yourself this, or is it just say it out loud and it works? What's your preferred method, as it were? Jay?
Yeah, I agree with you, Russ. It's saying things out loud because in your head, people don't realize this. There's 3 parts to your brain, and the chimp, the inner critic, is another thinking brain. It isn't you. So a lot of those words you hear is not you thinking that. I can't explain where they come from because nobody knows.
I don't agree with that. Who is it if it's not you?
I can't explain that because it's depending on your beliefs. But if you know what you're thinking, tell me what you're thinking next. You can't.
Well, no,
it's interesting you call it a chimp because I'm a little lost with that. I know there's books and everything about it. I get that. I know you're not making it up. I get it. But I wouldn't call it. I would just call it the part of you that's the negative part of you, the terrible critic, the person who's always flagellating you for no particular reason because they've got nothing positive to say. But I wouldn't call it a chimp.
No,
my head.
I was to say, I think of it as more of a subconscious mindset, which is, I think, it's absolutely fine. Subconscious mind at least still sounds like it's coming from you. But correct me if I'm wrong, are you suggesting that it comes from something else, someone else? Is that what you're saying?
I wouldn't say someone else, but it has been proven that it isn't from you. I can't explain why, because it's just like I said, you don't know the next thought that's coming in your head, but the words you use to describe it, they're all encompassed in the same, as far as the subconscious, the inner critic. It just people use different words to describe this, but it's all the same.
As a chimp.
Umbrella.
This is just my view. By the way, the answer to Dave Sleet's question, yes, 100%, Dave, we will discuss this. 100%, Phil and I could definitely nominate some people for an APA mental health award. For sure, definitely. Here's the thing, Jay, and this is just my view. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. To call it a chimp, i.e. that part of your brain that's beating you up, let's just use silly language. It's beating you up. It's being very negative. Makes it almost playful or makes it not quite human. It's an animal. It's a chimp. It's going to eat bananas and swing around trees and do all the things that chimps and monkeys do. It's not giving it the full gravitas of what you're actually doing to yourself. That would be my argument. You see where I'm going with that?
I think where the chimp comes from is because it's the emotional part of your brain. So if you go back to looking at children and when they're in that emotional part of their brain, they do sometimes behave, I guess, a bit like a chimp. So I guess maybe that's where it comes from. But you can call it whatever you want to call it. Inner critic is, I guess, the most
inner critic seems a little more sophisticated and a bit more accurate.
But no, but it seems more something that people can relate to. Now, look, this is, by the way, I know that, Jay, you're just sort of almost paraphrasing, as it were, and just helping us to understand the situation. But what I'm trying to get at is that I think that sort of one of the duties MRS, Men's Radio, prides itself on, and WRS, is to actually help people understand their emotions. And what I worry about is by almost unintentionally trivializing it by referring to it as some sort of animal that doesn't necessarily have any bearings on us, means that people will think, well, they have something they have no control over, or they absolutely can't relate to it, and therefore this is not for them. And I'm worried people will think like that. I don't want them to, because actually what you're talking about is more than essential. This is us in a nutshell. It's exactly what we do here at MRS. So might I say that, are you seriously suggesting that you believe that anyone out there, adult or child, whoever it is, I mean, I love the fact that you're sort of working with children to actually sort of get them prepared for what might come later in life. I think that's essential. But are you saying that you believe anyone of any age can take control of their emotions if they use the right techniques?
Yeah, definitely. I would say so. Obviously, I'm going from my experience personally and the clients I work with, which are adults and children. But it does take practice, and you will get it wrong. And yeah, you just have to practice. But I guess you need to maybe have people around you that can support you if you don't know how to do it. But yeah,
that part is essential, Jade. That must be essential, because otherwise, how the hell do you know what you're doing?
Exactly.
You've got to, and you need, and where do you need people around you who are like-minded but positive. Surround yourself with. Phil and I had a guest once, a couple of years back. They came up with a phrase, and it's been part of my life ever since. Mood hoovers. You know, you meet people, and they just suck up your good mood and put you in a bad mood. You think, I don't want these people in my life. It's hopeless.
I've never heard mood hoovers. I love that. I generally call them energy vampires, but I love mood hoovers.
There you go. That's another phrase we use. Energy vampires. That's exactly what they do. They come in, suck out your energy, and you think, oh, everything's terrible. No, it's them. It's not. It really isn't you. And you have to be really careful. It's like a contagious illness if you're not careful. Jules Silverman is saying, here we go, Jay. Here we go. Jay is talking about the book The Hidden Chimp. I got it for my son a few years ago, says Jules Silverman.
Would you be prepared, Jay, to give us some examples of what you were talking about? You were saying about sort of if you practice the right techniques. Have you got a technique that you could share with us, with the listener now, just who may be thinking to themselves, I wished I knew what to do to be able to help control some of my emotions?
Generally, I'd say, if you are feeling a certain way, this is for adults and children. I teach a lot of the stuff I teach to children is from adult stuff. So check where there's signs for these emotions, and you can feel them in your body. And I would suggest you, because once those, let me go back to thought stopping. I'll tell you about thought stopping.
Okay.
Basically, you can. You know, the internal chatter you get, we'll call it the inner critic, because I know you're more comfortable with that. So the inner critic, when that inner critic is coming in, like you, speaking out loud sometimes gets rid of that because it drowns the noise. But this may sound absolutely crazy, but in my head, I've told this to lots of people. So this comes from, I don't know who invented this, but it's called thought stopping. Anyway, you shout in your head, stop, and you let it ring out, because it's just interrupting. Let's call it breaking the pattern of those thoughts. And it takes practice. And some people...
I do that. I'm with you 100%. Yeah. With you 100% on this. I will actually say, shut up. And tell it to F
you're
off.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, I don't need to listen to this. I just don't. I'm not talking about someone saying, I'm not talking about an external critic. I will always listen to positive criticism. If somebody says, would you mind if I make a suggestion? I will always listen, because if you stop learning, your life's done. You should always be learning. But when it's yourself bashing yourself in the face, it's ridiculous. And sometimes you really do need to have some sort of technique, whatever works for you would be my view, to just stop it. I'd never thought of it as thought stopping, but yeah, I realized that I've been doing that. Lisa Janes says, this is we're getting loads of messages. Lisa Janes says, music therapy is also very good. Upbeat tunes take you to a happy place. I use it with my mum for her dementia. Totally get that.
Yeah, music's a good one to change your mood. That's a good suggestion. Music's amazing.
And Lisa James comes back as well. What do you think of this, Jay? Maybe Jay should explain it that the part of the brain can be fantasy, i.e. block out any negativity and create a happy place. Hence why children, which is your speciality, why children sometimes have imaginary friends. I could go on for hours, but that's what I studied, says Lisa James. Interesting. Imaginary friend. I've always been a little worried about. It's never been part of my life, or in fact, oddly enough, in any of my kids' lives. But no, I've never really got that. Just because I haven't encountered it. I'm not saying it's good or bad or indifferent. I've never. What do you think? That's something you suggest?
Sorry, what was that? Suggest?
Is it something? The imaginary friends.
I
always think it's a bit of a dangerous road. But that's just.
It's not something that I haven't really encountered. So I've never had an imaginary friend, and I don't really have anything to say.
But you've got an imaginary clock. It's a start. You've got an imaginary clock because it doesn't work.
No, exactly. Just there to look.
I can't help it. I'm very particular about anyone who knows me knows I have to have every clock correct to the second. It's an obsession. To the second, not to the minute, to the second. Every clock, every watch.
It's ridiculous. It takes so much of his time. Ha ha. Anyway, can I suggest, that as someone who I vaguely remember, I did have imaginary friends when growing up. I think that imaginary friends is not necessarily. No, I think I did. I vaguely remember it. I think imaginary friends are okay to a certain age. I think where it can start to go wrong is when you start sort of crossing that threshold of young child into sort of middle-aged child, as it were, sort of just before you get to teenage years. That's where it can potentially become a bit unhealthy, because what it could do, I believe, is it could have a sort of reverse effect. Whereas you may practice any social skills you think you need to practice with imaginary friends, if you start withdrawing from actual friends, then it could have quite a detrimental effect. And I'm sort of speaking from experience, because I know that I wasn't very good at making friends in early life. I have to say, I would like to think I'm more than made up for it now, but I wasn't very good with it. Shut it. Anyway, I wasn't very good at it in early life. So as a result of it, I can now sort of in hindsight blame some of that on the notion of imaginary friends, because I thought, well, I'm never alone. And I don't mean that in sort of an exorcist kind of way. I just mean I'm never alone in the sense that I didn't have that feeling of loneliness, and therefore it wasn't necessary for me then.
And here's one for the older kids. You're never alone with a strand, which will mean nothing to you, Jay, and nothing to Phil, and will mean loads. As many of our listeners will go, oh God, I'd forgotten that.
Yes.
There was a brand of cigarettes called Strand.
Oh, I see.
And it'd go, you're never alone.
But I wonder where the onus lies, because you can't necessarily blame children for creating and being imaginative, because actually there's a massive part of that that's quite healthy. You know, having an imagination and actually shattering a child's imagination, I think, is one of the cruelest things to do, because let's be honest, you don't get much chance for it later in life. You know, they call it hallucination later in life. In early life, it's called imagination. And I'd say that sort of if you're going to start taking that away from children, that's a dangerous road to go down, I would have thought.
I guess on the imaginary friend thing, because as you get older, your brain kind of believes. It's like if you've had a dream, and my partner has had this dream a long time, that I've been horrible, I've done it, they'll wake up and they'll bring that emotion with them from their dream, because your brain really believes. So I guess this where some people go into the law of attraction, that kind of thing, what you put out and you really visualize. And there is a proven study in some university about a basketball team with visualization. So I guess that's on the same maybe line as like team. Yeah, they did a study on a basketball team that basically they split the team into three sections, and basically the first group went to the basketball court and they practiced an hour a day shooting hoops. The second group, I'll give you the short version here. The second group did nothing, and the third group visualized shooting hoops. And actually the two groups, the one that visualized and the one that actually went and shot hoops, they improved their skill by 24%, and the one that obviously didn't practice didn't at all. So that's where they get the study that if you visualize and obviously put in the work, you can actually get better at a skill.
Which is interesting, because if you look at that in a detrimental effect, that would explain a lot as to why people can sometimes spiral out of control. If they go down the path of hallucination and think that something is going wrong in their life, it kind of stands to reason that if they are tricked, for want of a better term, into thinking that there is some legitimacy to their thought process, that they actually could end up being forgiven for sort of this hybrid world they live in, and not necessarily knowing where reality begins and fantasy ends. So that's actually makes an awful lot of sense.
Couple of great comments coming up, Jay. One from Lisa James again. No, I mean, why children sometimes have imaginary friends, i.e. if they're lonely or being bullied. Anything over the age of 9 is worrying. And she ends with, come on, Jay, this is basic psychology. I think anything over the age of 9, you've got a bit of a problem on your hands. Jules Silverman comes on to the point about the chimp, which is really interesting. And I think this explains it a lot. The reason it's called the hidden chimp, I think, is because we have 2 parts of our brain, red and blue. The red brain we can't control, moody, sad, upset about something naughty in kids. The blue part we can control. Chimps only have the red brain. That's why it's called the inner chimp. When we have feelings or thoughts we can't control, as humans, we need to use the blue part of our brain that can control to keep the red one under control. It's saying, and I can't read anymore because
she goes on to saying, it is saying all thoughts and feelings are normal. So when children are naughty, they realize they can change by controlling their inner chimp themselves.
And that's why they call it a chimp hijack, because that part of your brain is hijacking, and children go from their emotional brain, I think, till you're 27, 28. So obviously by an adult, because obviously you've got 3 different parts of your brain, as I said before. So yeah, I love that.
Okay. And Paul Andrews is saying, yep, visualization is really important, positive and negative, conscious and subconscious. And then he says, study shows that visualization alone can improve muscle. If you've broken a limb, visualizing exercises can stop atrophy in the muscles.
Wow.
Blimey.
Wow, that is amazing.
I wonder how far that can actually go, though. Because are we saying that you can sort of think to yourself, one can think oneself to a position of success in almost anything? In other words, if you were to say visualize something that you want badly enough, does that mean that suddenly it comes to fruition?
Because Stana Katic has never turned up at my front door. She has never turned up. And the chances are fairly bloody slim, quite honestly. Just putting it out there. There we go.
Dear. Well, quite. You are listening, by the way, to the Men's Radio Station. It's the Daily Show with him, Ross Kane. Don't know what's happened to him, I'm sure. With him, Ross Kane, and with me, Phil Day.
You just said if you visualize things enough, it happens. It doesn't always.
We are with, you're an idiot. Right. We are speaking.
Where's Lana Turner where you want her?
We're speaking to empowerment coach Jay McGeek, who is with us, and he's telling us the fascinating work he does with trying to educate children in particular, but adults and children, but children in particular, about preparing them for the mental tools, I suppose is the best way of putting it, that they may end up needing for later life. Is mental tools a fair description, would you say, Jay?
Yeah, I'd say so. I take tools, like I said, from emotional intelligence, from personal development, from mental health, even talking about what is mental health, because, yeah, I would say that in conversation. Yeah,
so sorry, Jay, when you're dealing with kids, is it because the parents have come to you and said, and I don't know your qualifications, they said, right, Dr. J or Jay, I'm seeing, little Johnny is X, Y, and Z. Can you help? Because obviously the kids aren't going to look you up online and say, oh, I'm 8 years old, I better go and see somebody to help me out. How are you approached? What is the kind of the method?
Generally, the children I work with are from coaches, because I'm actually qualified as a transformational life coach. So generally, they're from the people that are doing this work themselves and realize how important it is for them. I do run a weekly group, which I just teach emotional intelligence, but I also work with children one-to-one on a solution-focused approach So yeah, it's generally people that are doing the work themselves as adults. Or my background is I used to be a teaching assistant in an autistic school, so I'm very interested in behavior. So, but it's just about teaching the children the tools. And generally within one session, on a one-to-one session, they've come back, and we like to use scales with children. So we'll use numbers, and they'll say they're a number 3, and then they'll come back the following week and they've moved up the scale because they've put some of the stuff into practice.
Well, hang on. Explain the scale. So like 1 is terrible, 10 is great, or is it 1 to 100, or what's the story?
It's 1 to 10 generally. So we'll talk about, as it's solution focused, we'll talk about, so basically it's like saying where you want to be and what you want to do, and then we work backwards from that. So we rewind back. So we always start with the goal as the beginning of what we're talking about.
And what is obviously I respect client privilege, even though you're not like a doctor, but I respect that.
Mm-hmm.
What is it the kids want? What is their 10 then?
Generally, the most things I deal with at the moment, obviously for the year we've had, is a lot of anxiety, with a lot of change that's been going on. But sometimes it's on anger, because obviously, as we know, anger is a very big emotion. And it's like, if you're not told how to help yourself with that, it's very hard to deal with. So we just talk about every emotion is valid, and we talk about what we can do with that anger. And generally the kids know what they can do. It's just not telling them it's wrong and we shouldn't do it. And I don't like the word naughty. I don't use any of those terms, and that's just my personal opinion.
What are they angry about?
A lot of things, really. One child gets very angry when she's not allowed to have food. So we just talk about
what you mean, like instead. I mean snacks. I mean, she's not being starved in a cellar, presumably. I mean,
no.
Like snacks or chocolates or crisps, or is that what we're talking about?
To be honest, okay. I can relate to that. So, but might I ask, Jay, out of interest, and this is not to, I don't want this to come across as questioning your work or your ability, but I'm genuinely curious, what kind of reaction do you get from the children that you work with? Because I could imagine that there has to be an element of amusement, because they've just potentially never been exposed to anything like this before.
Generally, the reaction I get is amazing, and the changes I see in a very short period are quite amazing, because if you don't know this stuff, then obviously you don't know this stuff, and there's adults out there that don't know. So generally we have a talk, and generally they're quite surprised that actually they do know the answers to what they need to do. I find a lot just want to be listened to be honest.
Is that because and you know, we've got a lot of parents and grandparents who watch and listen to the show every day. Is that because the parents are too busy, or they're not, this is a broad brushstroke, great parents, or you know, they're not being listened to because they're children, so shut up? Is that it? Maybe,
because I home educate my son, who is 10 years old, because the school system, it's a very outdated thing. That's just my personal opinion. It wasn't right for my son. But I think a lot of adults are in this ego of children need to be quiet, and do you know what I mean? But children, I find, from stepping back and just listening to them, they actually do know what they need to do. Occasionally, obviously, they need support, but they just want to be heard. And I think that's a powerful thing for adults and children, to just be listened to, not try to be fixed, not try to be changed, just literally to have somebody hold the space for them.
So can I know this isn't why you're here, and I had no idea about this. You're homeschooling your son, who's 10. I'm going to put my hands in a hornet's nest here, Jay, so I'm just going to say it. Do you think in some way you're depriving him of the interaction with his mates in class? And, you know, one of the reasons you go to school is that, you know, you meet friends, you socialize, and go to their place after school and have tea and all the rest of it.
I get that question a lot about the socialization. And what I say is, we do not lock him in a cupboard. He can socialize quite thingy. He goes to different activities in the evening. He goes to golf. He goes to different things. But my son is an empath. I'm not sure if you are familiar with that, because I wasn't. So he takes a lot of other people's energies on. So sometimes my son doesn't want to socialize with anybody. And so it's a valid question, but we make more effort probably to get him to go and socialize when he wants to, than maybe some people that maybe just assume that in school they're doing that.
I get that. And have you? I know this isn't why you're here, but I'm just fascinated. I don't think we've had anyone who's done homeschooling, and it's a controversial thing. But is it because you want to teach your son the things that are important? In other words, Phil and I have joked in the past. You know, I had to learn sines, tangents, algebra. I've never used sines, tangents, algebra, logarithms, cosines in my life, ever. Right? Never, ever.
Yeah.
Complete waste of time. Right? Basic maths, important, right? Restaurant bills, handy. But, you know, science and cut, I'm not an engineer. I'm never going to be an engineer. Is that because you want to choose what your son is going to learn?
Partly. Jaden, my son, had a very bad experience with bullying in school from adults and children. So that was part of it. The other part is school is very outdated. It was originally created to help people work in factories. And we have lots of different styles of the way people do. So there's lots of different elements of why. But yeah, I want to teach my son because I empower him with things that I believe he should know about his emotions and stuff. And he was going into school, coming out deflated because those people didn't do it the way we do. So it's kind of hard to parent.
Do you have a curriculum?
So yeah,
you have your own personal J curriculum.
Yeah, pretty much. We work on the things he's interested in. We work on the stuff. He comes along to my empowerment leagues. I run that twice a week at the moment, and he comes to both sessions. He does a bit of motivational speaking himself and is a wise little man. But yeah.
Wow. Okay. What about basic? By the way, I couldn't let this one slip. I don't think all schools were designed just so you could go and learn a little bit and go into a factory. I mean, some of them are designed so you get a basic education in geography and history and stuff like that. If we don't know our history, we can't go forward. That's just my personal view, but I believe it very strongly. So, you know, do you do standard subjects? I know this is not why you're here. I'm just really fascinated. That's all.
It's fine, far away. I'm a very authentic, real kind of guy, and whatever you want, I'll answer to the best of my ability.
I'm just really curious. That's all.
Generally, there's lots of different ways to home educate your child. And generally, we do some subjects, but sometimes we don't because he's learning and children learn literally constantly. So, yeah, we do. Sometimes we will do a bit of maths. But as far as like writing and all that stuff, my son actually owns his own bracelet business. So he learns stuff through doing that. But yeah, I think there's lots of different ways to learn.
Now, Jay, I'm very aware of the time. I don't want to run out of time. And people have been obviously fascinated by what you've said. And I'm sure they would like to know where they go if they want any more information about what you do and how they could potentially sort of seek your services if needs be.
Thank you. Yeah, you can find me if people are watching on the YouTube channel. My Instagram is J_coaching1111. I'm on Facebook as well. So yeah, just come along and have a chat if you want to know anything. Like I said, I'm a pretty open guy. I can only speak from what I know, and I don't claim to know everything. And I'm still learning and growing. But
well, might I say that but what you have told us this morning and this afternoon has been really interesting, and thank you very much indeed for it.
Thank you very much for having me.
Not at all. Our pleasure. Thank you, Jay.
Keep well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Get in some Welsh whiskey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, I had people hammering on the door.
Quite all right.
Amazon.
Quite. You know, the Amazon have interrupted the show twice today.
What can you do?
No, tell me about it. I think that was fascinating. And I know it sounds really silly to say I think it was, because, you know, once in a while we stumble across guests who, and you know what I'm talking about, who
well, I don't actually continue the sentence. I'm not psychic.
Leave an impression on us.
Yeah.
you can never quite work out what that impression is until you go away and properly think about it. I feel like Jay was one of those people.
Now, I'm going to pull up one of our listeners.
Yes, I saw that, and I knew.
I'm going to pull him up.
Hear it, because that's not.
And Ed, I love your interactions. I really do. There's no subtext. I love your interactions, your enthusiasm, and your support is hugely appreciated. But I kind of hope in 2021 we can move on from the way people look. That doesn't take away from what the guy is saying. In the same way that Xandra Rhodes has always been outlandish, different in the way that she dresses, but she's a genius bloody designer. She's fantastic, and has been a pathfinder in the vanguard of fashion for decades. So, I choose to look like this because that's how I choose to look. Phil chooses to look. So I think it was a bit. It's not your choice, and it's not my choice. It's your choice to say whatever you like, of course. Thank God. We can still kind of do that in the United Kingdom, although I begin to think we can't. But commenting on somebody's appearance is, I'm interested in what they have to say and what they can add to our mental health. If the guy chooses to look like that's fine. It's not my cup of tea, but then loads of things aren't my cup of tea. Can I recommend? Sorry, go on.
Like Redbush. You don't like rooibos tea at all.
I don't like rooibos tea. Oh. You love it. You sit there sipping it away, dreaming of the homeland. But I don't. Ramsey and Jules and have been having a wonderful old conversation here, all about the books. It's the Steve Peters, this whole Chimp Paradox. I wasn't keen on that. It doesn't really resonate with me. But obviously, people much cleverer than I will ever pretend to be have written books. Jules Silverman says, in fact, Steve Peters has written 2 books: The Chimp Paradox, which Jay was referencing there, and one for kids. And all the links are up there from Wikipedia. And then My Hidden Chimp is the other book, says Jules Silverman. So Ramsey and Jules. It's nice. It was meant as a challenge. Well, yeah, I tell you why I didn't raise it, because in all seriousness, Ed, I tell you why I didn't raise it. Not because I act as a censor. If someone's very rude or just obnoxious, I will censor it, because we don't need that shit. But the reason I didn't raise it, the guy's a guest. He's taken time out of his schedule to be with us. I've never met him before. Phil's never met him before, and I just think it would make somebody feel really uncomfortable if you get on that footing of being kind of aggressive, even if it's passive aggressive. That would be, if it's somebody I know. I mean, Phil and I rip into each other all the time. We know each other. We've known each other for many years. That's fine, because at the basis of it is, I hate to say it, a mutual respect and a friendship, which is fine. So we can be cruel to each other, and we know it's a gag,
and a love of whiskey, which helps,
and the love of whiskey and the occasional cigar for Phil, and the often cigar for me. But that's not the thing. If it's somebody I don't know who's come on as a guest and they're here to talk about a subject, for me or Phil to just launch into, well, you got a hairbrush at home? What's the matter with you? You got some scissors? It would just get the whole conversation off to, I think, sort of like, why these guys invited me on and they're being rude.
Do you know, actually, that
I wouldn't choose to look
when I
choose to look like this. I could do that and do this. I choose not to. It's my choice.
When I used to have my hair in a not far dissimilar fashion, and I would also dress a little quirkier as well, because no, I know. I mean, I know. I do recognize that I dress in a particular way that is probably stuck in the 1940s, 1950s, but it used to really make me feel bad. It's the only way I can describe it. If anyone ever would sort of look at me, and the worst was if they'd laugh. I hated that. I really hated how it made me feel. But I actually...
But why did you decide to, in that case, and this goes back to what Ed's point, why did you, did you do it to kind of spite them because that's how you feel comfortable dressing in that style. You had and you still have a very distinctive Phil Dave style, you know.
Paul Andrews, you're an idiot. It's Friday, I've got my frock on.
Ed's coming back, and Ed is a very mature, sensible person, but I love his passion. Of course, it's his choice. I just wanted to know if what he represents with that look. That's all. Sorry to upset. No, it didn't upset me at all. No. I didn't want to upset a guest. Trust me, you know me well enough. If a guest is unpleasant or whatever, they'll get it with both barrels. I don't care. I don't have to be GMTV on this show.
Yeah, you were saying, why do you go with it? Why would you do that?
Yeah.
And the answer to that's relatively straightforward. Is in the early days when I was, and I hate it. It sounds so cliche, but when I was discovering myself, that's what I was drawn to. That's what I wanted to wear. When people laughed at me, I used to feel as if, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's something not quite right with this. It was only after punching through it. It was only after fighting through for, I don't know how long it took, that I actually learned to love the laughter. Because what that laughter told me, and it's all about perspective, I think. I'm thinking, Dave, you'd have a better grip on this than me, Dave Sleep. But what that laughter told me is that they were uncomfortable, not me. On the contrary, I was actually enormously comfortable with the way I dressed and the way I looked. They were the ones who were laughing because they had never necessarily seen that before. They could never imagine.
It wasn't so outrageous. You weren't walking in like Harry Styles with a handbag and a frock. I mean, all that box. I mean, you were dressed in a kind of stylish manner. It wasn't outlandish.
But I think there was an element of outrage back in the day, as it were, so to speak, because what you see now as normality in terms of, well, I say normality, you call Harry Styles normal, it's a bit of a stretch, but you know what I mean. If what you would refer to now as sort of the extremist dress code of, say, Harry Styles was just it wasn't even created then. You know, no one wouldn't even in a million years would a guy think of leaving the house wearing a feather boa who was straight. You know, you might see it around Soho or something like that. You sure as hell wouldn't see someone who genuinely left the house who, as a heterosexual male, wore a feather boa and carried a handbag. It just would not happen. Nowadays, I feel like the world has sort of become so blurred, or the lines have become so blurred, that actually that matters less. But it was interesting sort of in the early noughties, which is when this is more me, or sort of the mid noughties, late noughties, I'd say. No, I beg your pardon, the early 10s. What am I talking about? I'm going back 2 decades. Sorry, the early 10s. I would say that it was still quite wacky to some, but I learned to laugh the laughter because actually the laugh meant that I'd done something right. It meant that someone had noticed. And I realized, so looking back, that that's a lot of what I do, is I do things to draw attention.
See, I'm the opposite. It's interesting. I dress down. I used to, you always dress up, and now I dress down the whole time because I'm much, much, much more comfortable with that. Linda is coming. It's almost like she's your mum. I thought Jay looked like a cool dude. It was individuality, she says, and it made you into the person you are today. What? Really, really irritating. I think that's basically it. Alexander Listenfeld, excuse me, says, I beg your pardon, I don't think any of us are normal. Here. We all have our own individual quirks, and we shouldn't let others change us. I agree. Totally. Why should we?
Well, a colleague of mine said the most fantastic expression, which I'd never heard before. And I don't often quote from this particular individual. And I won't necessarily say his name either. But this colleague said to me, the only normal people are those you've not met yet. I thought, what a brilliant expression.
It's very clever, isn't it? I work on the basis everybody's mad. It keeps me in good stead. I do. I think, you scratch the surface. It's always that way. You think, oh, that's that. And then you scratch the surface a little bit. You think, jeez. I mean, everyone's got quirks.
Yeah, but there are common factors. There are things that we can all, hopefully nearly all of us can agree on. And that is the majority of agree that one would never leave the house without being fully clothed. I appreciate some don't think like that, but I'm just saying the majority would think that.
Kind of would be nice.
It's exactly the same way the majority of people don't necessarily go around causing harm to others deliberately anyway, or physical harm to others. The point is that there is common ground, and it's, I think, okay to break that common ground as long as it doesn't cause any harm to anyone else.
Ed says, Phil, how do you know he is straight? A bad word, by the way. Well, I don't care. It's irrelevant. It's a kind of irrelevancy, isn't it? Well, I mean, he was there to discuss, the chimp brain and use it.
No. He's talking about
Am I misunderstanding?
He's talking about Harry Styles. He's talking about
Harry Styles.
When I said that Harry Styles
isn't irrelevant to me. I just don't care.
Look, I'm sorry, okay, but when I say sorry, I'm not apologizing for using the word straight, for crying out loud. That is a widely accepted word as describing someone who is heterosexual. What would you like me to say? Someone who
you fall for it hook, line, and sinker. I don't know why you always fall for it. He throws that. He baits his hook and he reels you in.
I don't get it. But I don't get it. I don't understand what the problem is with that. And I'm curious. I'm genuinely interested to know what the problem with the word straight is now. Consider it an education.
There's no problem with the word straight. There's no problem with the word straight. I just think, hello, Monty or Carlo's going berserk there.
Sorry, Carlo's just said someone's at the door. Sorry.
No, Alex on the list of Phil. Sorry, I always say Alex and you think, who am I talking about? Because I've always ever known her for Alex for the last, when she was the big cheese at BT Cellnet when we first met in the Flying Eye. An old cliche, but we shouldn't judge a book by its cover ever. Except, and I'm serious, unless it's a book. Which is the irony, because if the book's got a rubbish cover, you won't buy it. Cover is essential to the book. Essential. Promise you that. Reel him in. I don't use the word normal, says Diane Taylor. Well, what is normal? What the hell is normal, Phil, they don't use the word straight, the wokes, I mean. Well, I don't care. Okay, I'm so sick of them. I'm going to put it out there. I am so sick of it. You're sick of it. I'm sick of it. Phil's sick of it. It's got to the stage. It's just lunacy.
Ed,
I think they will look back. They will look back on this period and go, "What did they all go raving mad at one point?"
I have to tell you, Ed. If the woke brigade don't use it, then I will make it my life's mission to use it for the rest of my days. But thank you.
Yes, enough. Ray Gelato, my pal. Ray Gelato, the great jazz player, great jazz saxophonist, and just one of the world's nicest guys.
And the music sings our theme tune.
And did all the music for our theme tune. Ray said the other 3 weeks ago, he said to me, Russ, he said to me and Colin Baines, film producer, he said, I think the world's having a collective nervous breakdown. I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. I think it's exhausting. We've just got through this pandemic, which has been a freaking nightmare. And you think, could we just have a break? No. So we've got all this crap going on British towns. Awful. Just so depressing. So upsetting. I've had to work really hard on myself for once to really pull myself out of the abyss in which I found myself, because I got so furious and so it's just so ghastly. It's just it has to end. Absolutely has to end there. Jules Silverman.
I really do feel that on that very point, okay, I actually feel that and I've said this before, I will say it again, the media, and I'm sorry, I'm a part of this media. I'm not proud.
You couldn't be any more part of it if you tried.
The media has it, but I don't set the agenda, though. There's a heck of a difference. The collective media sets the agenda. It's not my job to decide what stories are spoken about and what's. I mean, it is to some degree, but
it is actually.
No, but
you produce a very big show. I'm talking about our show. I mean, you produce a big show. That is your job. That's what you do.
No, I do. And believe me, there's been many times when I have not given a particular subject oxygen because I don't want to give it any more oxygen.
So you are acting as a filter then.
But the number of times that the stories that are chosen, so that one of the programs that I work on, for example, is very heavily influenced by the newspapers. So when I say the media, I mean the press, okay?
Mm-hmm. Right.
The press influences a lot. don't underestimate just how much the press has an effect on everyone's thought processes. If the press would stop giving coverage to the most negative and the most depressing sides of every single story possible, I can't even begin to think how much better this world would be in to live. How on earth are people supposed to feel who have received the jab, who've gone through all the nightmare of the last year, thinking at last the end is in sight?
Bit of happiness coming our way now.
That the end is in sight. And now, nearly all over every one of the front pages this morning, doubts cast over the 21st of June now, the end of lockdown. How dare you do that? Doubts is very different to it is going to change. That's not what the government message is. In fact, on the contrary, the government message, sorry, I'm getting on a rant now. The government message is actually very simple. They say they have to wait a few more days to know for certain, but things are looking promising because hospitalization is down, and those who are being hospitalized are mainly those who are not vaccinated. Oh, there's a shock. No one saw that coming, did they? Because that's why we're going through this vaccination program, is to get us out of this, not to encourage us to start reeling back in again and start.
Let me ask you a question. It's a serious question, so not a frivolous question. If you knew someone had refused to have the vaccine, would you still meet up with them?
Tricky. I would say that after I'd been doubly vaccinated, and had sort of given the few weeks that it needs the double vaccination to actually sort of take effect, then yes, I probably would. Because I'd think to myself, if they want to put themselves at risk, that's up to them.
Yeah. But are they putting you at risk, though? You in the widest sense. I don't mean Phil Day.
There is a greater risk for coming into contact with someone who is unvaccinated. But the ultimate goal is to see that, this is what all of the virologists said, is that they want to see about 60 to 70% of the adult population have some sort of immunity, whether that be through vaccination, whether it be through having the disease, whatever it is. Well, as it stands, over 70% of the adult population in this country have had at least one jab. I think the number stands at around 74%. Something like 52% have had a second jab. So with all of that in mind, I would say that if the virologists are to be believed, the risk is very low. On those bases alone, on that basis alone. And what my major point with all of this is, I hate the negativity. It is so unhealthy. So
it's exhausting. It's exhausting. It's depressing. It's shocking for our mental health.
It's so dangerous.
And it's dangerous. And it's ill-informed. It's uninformed. It's coming from unsubstantiated sources. And this is, I've been making the joke for the last year. We've got to listen to Doreen, the hairdresser from Stoke-on-Trent, who suddenly is a medical expert, as opposed to someone who's been in the medical profession for 10, 15 years, and that's what they've devoted their life to. So Doreen's opinion on matters medical are suddenly equally as important and as valid as someone who's an expert. This is nuts. This is like getting into a British Airways plane and you vote for the pilot. No, you don't vote for the pilot. You have somebody flying the plane who's fully trained. That's the point. Don't just have any old Herbert up in the cockpit hoping for the best. If I press this, it might work. Or I might plummet from the sky. I mean, it's just nuts. And yet we have given so much airtime and so much credence to people that you really should just say, shut up. One, you're an idiot. Two, you're talking rubbish. Just shut up. No one cares what you think.
And I can't understand. I really don't understand.
I don't get it.
The problem is we have regulators. This is what's so frustrating, is we actually have a regulatory body in place that is supposed to monitor media and make sure that the media behaves. What I just don't get is the way that outlet after outlet is just allowed to spread doom and gloom. And it is It's just so wrong.
Well, you do want to balance. You don't want to become the Ceausescus. Now, the Ceausescus, when they ran their fiefdom, what I loved about it, when they were found guilty, they were taken straight out of the courtroom and shot. Didn't have any of this mucking around, living on death row for years on end. Boom, they literally came straight out the courtroom. Actually appears in my new book, this whole notion. And they were put in front of a wall and they were all shot within minutes. You don't want, the reason I brought that up is you don't want the fakeness. So in other words, they didn't want people putting on this is true, they didn't want people putting on their heating and using up resources like fuel. So the weather people were instructed to say it was warmer than it actually was. So the fact that you were freezing your nuts off at home, but the weather came on the radio and the television told you it was balmy, you think, oh, it must be me. So you don't want that, but you really wish there was some sort of, come on, stop with the endless negativity. Now, Ed Grossman Russ, the science is being very gloomy right now. That's the problem. And then Phil, I heard a sage chap talking yesterday. He doesn't want the 21st of June to go ahead. Let me tell you something.
Sage,
I have been
their way, we would be locked up forever. So I'm sorry.
Phil has done a complete 180 on this situation, and he has been incredibly adherent to the rules, as have I. Not because we're good citizens, but we're just trying to do the right thing. But I have to say, if they attempted another lockdown, I think the place would fall apart, because there's only so much that people can take.
Look, the bottom
really
line
is.
But actually, this is exactly my point. There is only so much that people can take. And my biggest concern, I've got to be very quick because I can see our next guest is very patiently waiting in the digital green room.
They're having digital wine, there's champagne, there's a full buffet, coffee, cold drinks, teas, everything there. Waitress service, it's marvellous in that digital green room.
The problem is that there is only so much we can take. And my biggest concern is that we are reaching critical mass at the moment. And if all you're going to do is put out negativity and doom and gloom out there, people's emotions are going to run incredibly high. We're already seeing that. So look at the violence that's going on around the world in different parts of the world. Tensions are high all over the flipping shop. And the reason for it is because it's kind of information overload where people are getting to the point where their emotions are just exploding and they have to let that frustration out somehow. And unfortunately, other people are getting the brunt of it. You know, an idiot like me can work this out. I'm fairly sure that the scientists who are supposedly in charge of this nonsense can work it out.
Dave Sleet sums it up as he always kind of does. The war now is the psychological recovery. We're all exhausted from this. Don't underestimate the toll it's taken. And let's move on. Let's be grown up and let's not say, well, you know, I learned how to crochet. I learned how to speak Serbo-Croat. I went to, you know, I've got fit. Great. Most of us were just happy to get through each day. All right, that was an achievement enough. We got through kind of in one piece and didn't go round the bend. It was a big deal. All right, so let's not beat ourselves up about that. But we're tired from it. So to suddenly get into the middle of a race war, you think, could we just have a breather for 5 minutes? We haven't even had a 5 minute. We're still in it, and it's kicking off. So it's just nature. I'll just say this, then let's get on to our next guest. Nature abhors, I keep saying this till I'm blue in the face. Nature abhors a vacuum. And if people in charge don't do the right thing and take charge, other people will step in, because nature cannot have this vacuum. And you don't want that, because it's anarchy. But be careful, because it's just around the corner.
This is The Daily Show here on Men's Radio with him, Russ Kane, and with me, Phil Dave. We're live until 2 o'clock this afternoon across Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and of course on mensradiostation.com and on Deluxe Radio and Radio Waves. And our next guest this afternoon is a psychotherapist by the name of Joshua Fletcher. Now, Joshua runs this fascinating Salford-based counselling service called The Panic Room. I'm very, very pleased as well that he joins us now to talk about that, as well as...
Great name.
Absolutely.
Great name. I love that name.
As well as he's here to talk about books that he's written and also podcasts as well, I believe. Busy sort of chap. Joshua.
He's too clever for us. He's way too clever. First of all, he's clever. Now he's good looking and young. I don't like him.
Welcome.
On my nerves.
The downside is I'm northern.
Oh, hang on, you're Northern. Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. Oh, forget it. That's all right. Oh, look, forget it. He's Northern. Who cares?
Joshua, a very warm welcome.
You know, Joshua, I've got to interrupt. I have very kindly a fitness instructor who's from the north, and we just have the funniest jokes twice a week because I just bring in every ridiculous, silly cliche just to amuse ourselves. She's very sophisticated. It's lovely up the north, much nicer than the south, to be perfectly honest with you. Welcome to Men's Radio Station, Joshua. Thank you for finding time to join us.
Thank you.
Now, first and foremost, let us start off with, just in case there are some people who don't know this, so we mustn't take it for granted, as a psychotherapist, what is it that you do as a psychotherapist? What does that mean?
Psychotherapy is basically it's someone who is trained in counseling, so listening, but they're also trained in certain modalities of psychology and counseling.
Lots of people. Joshua, what was the word you used? Certain
modalities. So people think therapy is one word, and therapy is an umbrella for many different types of therapy. You know, if you go to the NHS with anxiety or depression, you're more likely to get prescribed CBT. But that's just one modality. If you want to pay a private counsellor just to have a room to talk to someone in, that would be person-centered humanistic therapy. And that's another modality. Then you've got the old Freud, lie on a sofa, talk about your problems, let's blame dad for all our issues. That's psychodynamic therapy. That's a modality. People, it's not really educated well enough for people about, oh, I went to therapy, it was rubbish. And for me, it'd be like, well, what type of therapy did you have? You know, it's because certain modalities.
So modality, another word being sort of the method in which something under a particular umbrella is carried out, as it were.
Yeah,
so to speak.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And psychotherapists are usually trained in 2 or more modalities. That's my take on it. There is actually no official description in the UK for a psychotherapist, but in general, that's kind of the accepted view.
I'm fascinated. You know, you've just hit on something I was having this conversation yesterday on the phone, when somebody were talking about somebody else, and somebody said, "Well, you know, they've tried therapy, it didn't work," and that's like saying, "Well, I went to a restaurant, they're all terrible everywhere in the world." I mean, it's not the same thing. It's just you're so right, and people always forget that there's types of therapy. And not all of them are going to be right for you. That's all there is to it. You've got to find.
And even the same type. Like I've in my life, I've seen 4 different CBT therapists. The first 2 I didn't connect with, and the last 2 I was like, actually, they're making progress here. So even if you find the right modality, you've got to find the right therapist that you get on with. If you don't get on with your therapist, there's no connection.
Is it a question? It's a human nature thing, Joshua, and I've always been fascinated. Is it a question that you say to yourself, I like this person, therefore I can engage with them over this process? Or is it that I don't have to like this person, but I trust their expertise? Because it's not a dating app, is it? It's not important that you think this is the loveliest person, let's go out and have tea together. It's important that they're making progress with you. That's kind of how I look at it, but I don't know if that's right or wrong.
That's really interesting. Actually, you know what? Sorry to butt in, because that's a really interesting thought in many aspects of life, really. Because if you think to yourself you don't necessarily like a colleague, I'm not being any specific here at all. If you think to yourself you don't necessarily like a colleague, but they are very good at what they do, or they are good for your organization as a whole, okay, you might not necessarily go out for dinner with them, but I'd like to think the majority of people can appreciate that they are good for that sort of setup, that situation. Doesn't it? Never thought of that before.
Yeah,
that's a really good question. Excellent, actually. It depends on what your preconception of therapy is. If you go to therapy with the preconception that you need to be fixed, and you look through an authority as someone who can fix you, i.e. maybe like treating it like a physical condition. Like if I go to my doctor, I don't need him to rub my back and tell me I'm all right. I need him to give me the medication to help me feel better. Psychotherapy is a bit different. For me, and me personally, but in general, in my opinion, psychotherapy works better when you do actually like the person, when there is a connection there. Because if you feel safe emotionally, that's when a lot of the good stuff happens. And particularly for men, they will only open up when they feel safe. They're incredibly guarded. Me particularly, I grew up very guarded. Young lad, goes to the gym, boxing, all that stuff, wouldn't show an emotion. Now I'm very open and honest about my emotions. I don't care anymore. But it's like, I felt safe in therapy to open up, and I tried to make people in my practice feel safe too. Whereas it's different when you go to the doctors and stuff, because I'll tell my doctor the matter of fact, but I won't tell them stuff in here that took me a long time to actually talk about. And I'm glad I did. It's the best thing I've ever.
It's not germane to the point. You got an arm that just take a silly example. You got an arm that's hurting. You go, doc, my arm's hurting. I don't know what it is. I don't think I fractured it. Could you have a look? Boom. That's it. It's a technical thing, isn't it? They're going to know, hopefully, and they're going to fix it, hopefully. But if you're going to a psychotherapist, we'll just use that as the overall umbrella. It's not that. It's not that. It's not that at all. It's a completely different relationship. Totally different relationship.
Absolutely.
Going to the doctor to fix your arm or your leg, it's like going into a shop and you want some socks. You go in. You go to a shop that's selling socks, you buy some socks. It's irrelevant whether you like the person selling you the socks or not. You want the socks, boom, job done. Same with the doctor. That's kind of it.
Absolutely. And bear in mind, you've got to remember, a lot of people come to therapy for self-esteem or to manage anxiety and depression. Now, overcoming anxiety and depression is actually internalizing a belief that you can cope with it, you're resilient, and you were the one that made the change. But if you go to a therapist and say, I've got anxiety and depression, you walk out thinking that the therapist has fixed you. What message do you take home? Do you take home the message that it was you that fixed it? Or do I get all the credit? And that's part of psychotherapy too, is that empowering people to understand and helping them to kind of address their issues, because ultimately that's what leads to lasting change and progress.
Is the best solution or the best result a combination of somebody like yourself, Joshua, who can walk you through this, and eventually you start to understand why you feel the way you do? So it's a combination of them guiding you and you having some sort of slow realization. Okay, now I get it. Now I understand why I'm feeling whatever it may be that your emotion is, and then you can move on from that. That seems to me,
I think that's
the
a great description. Yeah, that's a really good description. That's what I do. I love psychoeducation, so I specialize in anxiety disorders, which aren't really spoken about, but I speak about them, and lots of people are interested. Happily, thank you. Because again, umbrella terms, things are vague, wishy-washy. I speak about anxiety in particular because anxiety I separate to two different types, and Phil and Russell, you might be able to kind of relate to these or know someone who goes through this. So the first type of anxiety is you've got your conventional anxiety. I'm worried about work. I'm worried about the pandemic. I'm worried about my relationship. I'm worried about my kids. It's conventional external anxiety that we all have. I'm worried about my exams. I'm worried about paying the bills. We get it. Everyone gets that, and everyone can relate to that kind of worry. I don't care who you are. But there's another type of anxiety that, it was 1 in 4, 1 in 5 before the pandemic. So I'd be interested to see what it is now. But I
think it's probably 10 in 5. I would imagine it's 10 in 5 now.
10 in 5. It's this inward disordered anxiety. And this is what I specialize in and talk about. And that is people who have intrusive thoughts, panic attacks, agoraphobia. People have health anxiety, social anxiety, where the anxiety goes inwards, where we fear and misinterpret anxiety itself. And that's I've been through that for years. I was very, very mentally unwell, and I overcame it and, dedicated my career to helping people with it. But that's the difference. That's the anxiety that people don't really talk about. So when, you say to someone, oh yeah, I've had anxiety, it's bad. I always say, well, what type of anxiety? Have you had your conventional anxiety like everyone has? Or have you really struggled with panic, agoraphobia, intrusive thoughts, where you're quite crippled by it?
Can I drill down a little bit here? Because this is such a hugely rich vein of topics. So to clarify, we shouldn't be beating ourselves up, which seems a real theme on today's show, of thinking, I'm anxious about my kids. I want everything to be okay. I hope that they're safe and well, or they're happily married, whatever it might be. I hope they're getting through. So that's a normal thing to be concerned about. And I wonder if we're using, it just popped into my head, Joshua, we're using the wrong term, because that's not particularly anxiety, that's concern, isn't it? I mean, it's just a concern as you would have as a parent, or I hope I'm doing okay in my job working in an ad agency or a factory or as a car mechanic, whatever it might be. I hope my boss isn't going to fire my ass. Well, that's understandable. Explain what you're sort of trying to counteract. What isn't healthy?
What isn't healthy is when that becomes excessive, when that becomes the narrative. Actually, those thoughts are helpful. So if you walk into work and you're a bit concerned about what your boss thinks and you might get fired, that will actually help your behavior. That'll make you, make sure that you come up dressed smartly and you do your job and you're not messing about, so you're not reckless. So those thoughts are actually as part of our rationalization process, which are helpful. But it becomes excessive when that's all you think about, when you start to notice things physically, when all your thoughts become what ifs, when you're ruminating in bed at night, when it's affecting your personal relationships, and you can't enjoy things at home, when it starts to seep into things and parts of your day where it shouldn't be there, that's when it becomes excessive. And that's kind of what you need to keep an eye on it. So anxiety is there's nothing wrong with anxiety. It's an emotion like, anger, happiness, or a feeling like hunger. You can't get rid of it. And it's actually to your advantage. If you didn't have anxiety, we'd all be walking into traffic or just being reckless, But the fact is, you've got to, good question, notice when it's seeping into other aspects of your life. And that's at that moment, that's when you need to intervene and perhaps seek help for it.
Sorry, go on, Phil.
I thought was absolutely amazing just before, and it's suddenly I'm learning so much on today's program. This is why I love this show, by the way, is because that Russ and I make it no hidden secret that we learn along the way. Okay, you can't stand it when you get people who rock up to a program and pretend they know better than their guest. We don't. Okay, this is why we have people like you on, Joshua. But one thing that I particularly found fascinating, you said, is it's about giving people the ability to, for want of a better term, keep themselves on the straight and narrow. So what you were saying before about it's not just a case of depending on someone to fix the problem for them, because otherwise they'll just keep coming back to that individual. It's about arming them with the tools to be able to make sure they stay corrected, as it were. And I think you can apply that to so many situations in life. Just straight off the top of my head, is I was thinking about, I wonder if the same could sort of be said for people who say diet, for example, is when you see these slimming clubs, for argument's sake, people go to slimming clubs because they believe the slimming clubs are going to help them reach their ultimate goal, which may well be the case, but they're actually very cleverly designed. You depend on those slimming clubs. That's why you have to keep going back week in, week out, and weigh yourself and say everything out loud and talk about it out loud, because you are being made to depend on it rather than actually being given that mindset to totally retrain the way you think your attitude towards food. And that's just one example I can think of. I'm loving that notion that you actually give people the ability to keep themselves on the right track. That's what was missing in so many aspects of life.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And you're right. It's like one of the if any of my ex-clients or people who follow my work on social media and stuff like that, they'll always hear me say this every week. And that is, who's getting the credit here? Who's getting the credit for that anxiety attack passing? Who's getting the credit for you losing that weight or whatever? Who's getting the credit for getting through that tough week? And for some people, they might say, well, it's very, very rare for people to say themselves. So some people say, well, thankfully, I had that emotional crutch to get me through that week. Sometimes those emotional crutches can be our vices, booze, drugs, even things like excessively smoking, other people. I'm glad that and don't get me wrong, it's okay to have support for things. But for me as a psychotherapist, I'm looking for people, they're in a good place when they can believe that they can manage on their own within reason, and rather than constantly seek it. And you don't want to drill the narrative of you have to do it on your own, don't seek help. No. But what I'm saying is psychotherapy is healing genuinely, because it teaches you and empowers you that you can do it yourself. It lies in you. And that's what I found for me. I spent years trying to seek reassurance, and I found that strength in me.
Why do we catastrophize so much? It seems to be a very common trait. Why do we do it?
It's not we that's doing it. So this is where I love psychoeducation. People catastrophize because our threat response has to suggest to you all the scenarios of a situation. It does that for everything. You're just not consciously aware of it. However, if you stay, and I've done a lot of work with the media and stuff on agoraphobia and particularly anxiety, and that's a year and a half in a pandemic, your threat response, your amygdala in your brain, it's your reptile brain that was there before your mammal brain. So it's even older than humans. That is in charge of looking out for threats. And that's what triggers that fight or flight response, or fight, flight, freeze response. As you'll know if you feel nervous before a job interview, or if you ever have one of those dreams where you're nodding off and then you dream you've fallen over and wake up, or scary film. That's the amygdala in your brain. And that isn't you. This is what people think. This is why this whole notion of anxiety and being weak is just ridiculous, because it's not even you're not controlling that part of the brain. It just gets conditioned to think that something is a threat that's trying to look after you. This is why people are nervous to go back to normal, go back to the pub, go back to restaurants, go back to doing all these things. Because over a year and a half, all we've been told is that everything outside is dangerous, normality is dangerous, because it has been. It has been. You've got to be careful. Other people are dangerous. And so going back to normal does create some trepidation. So when I used to go to the supermarket or the pub, I used to think, great, I can't wait to go. Now I catastrophize because my threat response is going, what could go wrong here? I'm on hyper alert. And by the way, we catastrophize even more when our stress rises. So if you're really, really stressed, that irritates that threat response. And then you start catastrophizing about stuff that you hadn't even thought about in your life. And that's a bit about how kind of anxiety works.
Dave says, if only the public understood, therapy is a partnership. He says that the client is the expert of themselves. The professional is the torchbearer that shines a light on the knowledge the client has got locked inside them already. Dave, I love your wording, seriously.
It's so true, though, isn't it?
That's a very humanistic view, and I love it. I did my master's in humanistic therapy. I would say, though, that sometimes I'm an advocate of psychoeducation, so I love humanistic therapy. When you do, people have the tools inside them. But for some presentations of anxiety like me, I actually needed someone to teach me what was happening in my body for me to understand it. But that particularly applies to stuff like trauma, panic attacks, things like that. But in general, a good therapist will believe in you, and you should be able to feel that in there. If you go in and your therapist is sitting there saying, I know more about you, and giving you that impression, that's not the right therapist. You don't want to work with people like that. As little power dynamic as possible.
When I was talking about catastrophizing, it's and we've had a lot of experts on. They say, well, you know what? It's 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're getting yourself into a terrible state. 95% of all the stuff that you think is going to happen, 95% will never happen. It's utter nonsense. It's never going to happen, and it won't happen. That's what I mean. We allow that voice sometimes, and you've got to fight it. I think everybody has to be strong. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. Oh God, it's not going to happen at all. It's just not.
In fact, I'd go and step. You're right. That voice does come up at 3 a.m. And actually, what's really nice is that the latest research is saying that you don't fight it because you give it attention. You ignore it. When you ignore something, it goes away. It's like a wasp. But if you swipe at a bad thought, like you swipe at a wasp, it gets annoyed and it sticks around for longer. But if you've got bad thoughts sticking around and at 3 a.m., there's something in metacognitive therapy called mindfully detaching. And you just ignore it. I say to my clients, the clients say to me all the time, this thought's annoying me. Like, I fight it, I argue with it, I tell her it's wrong. But the whole point of the threat response is to make you doubt. So you can never get 100% certain.
All right, so Joshua, how do you, it's like a screaming baby. You can't ignore it. Eventually you go into the room because the screaming is like a drill in your head, and you want to see what's going on as well. I'm not certainly correct. So how do you ignore something that's gnawing at you?
You don't ignore it. You willfully tolerate it whilst, and this is the key word here, practicing with your attention. So if I've got, I used to struggle with intrusive thoughts. So I know I used to have intrusive thoughts about my family members dying, about me being violent thoughts, etc. And they used to keep me up all night. I know firsthand what it's like to have horrible thoughts, catastrophic thoughts, and traumatic memories. And the way I've got better is that I used to fight them, ruminate about them, try to fix them, work them out. And actually, what was nice is that I go, okay, I'm having a thought now. And so you step outside and you observe it as a thought. You are not your thoughts. You can choose whether or not to give it all your attention or not. Now, you're right. You can't tell it to turn off. You can't dismiss thoughts. That's impossible. But what happens is your brain will always get bored. So if you allow a thought to be there with no resistance and you let it pass, the brain will move on. But if you start arguing with it and provoking it, it sticks around. And then you actually tell the brain it's an important thought, so you have them more.
Can you just tell it to go away? It sounds very simple.
I'm not perfect. Sometimes I'll be like, go away.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Sue Sleet up in Fife in Scotland, via Staples Corner and Bromley. I ignore those 3 a.m. thoughts by reading my books until I fall back to sleep. Yeah, I get that. I watch TV. I watch loads of documentaries.
I've actually... now hang on a second. You see, that's really interesting, okay, because you were saying about documentaries. That's one thing I try not to watch at nighttime. The problem is if you watch something that's enthralling, right, and it sounds really daft, but if you try and watch something that's enthralling, then you're just going to stay awake through it. If you watch something that's comforting, something that's familiar, I think that helps people switch off a lot more and go to sleep. But if you're going to watch something that actually you want to see the conclusion, you want to hear the conclusion, then it makes it a lot harder.
I've been to watch 3 documentaries last night. I mean, they were. We've talked about that with Alge. Here's a question for you, Aaron, Joshua. This is from Aaron Carey, and it's a very interesting point. We're talking about doctors, and my sock analogy. You got time? You haven't got time. I think what Russ described about doctors is actually what they're missing. Years ago, most people knew their doctor and trusted them emotionally as well as physically, and that's been lost. I think we're talking about GPs here, basically.
My master's thesis was on the experiences of people with an anxiety disorder seeking treatment with their GPs. So I spent a year studying this. Wow. And mixed results. I found that people in the big urban areas don't have that connection with their GP anymore. One of the biggest findings I found, though, is that, and this is no way an ad hominem attack on GPs, they've got to know a little about a lot, is that their knowledge of anxiety disorders, which again 1 in 4 is pretty low because they're not taught it really. Even my own GP admittedly doesn't know a lot about anxiety disorders. And when you've got 1 in 4 people struggling with an anxiety disorder, it's quite disheartening. And particularly there's also a culture where you hastily prescribe medication, which was also found in my research that 70% of my clients felt that they were hastily prescribed medication when they felt like they didn't need it. You've lost that connection with your GP. On one side, you've lost that trust. But on the second side, you've actually got a lack of, not the doctors themselves. Some of the doctors do have knowledge, but in general, they don't. I have doctors coming to me, and I have doctors following me on Instagram to polish up on anxiety disorders. I shouldn't be having to instruct doctors. Do you know what I mean?
See, Joshua, my last experience with a GP, very, very nice guy. Please don't misunderstand. NHS, you will not find me knocking them at all. I had 3 specific things. He said, well, I can only give you X amount of time. I mean, so you can choose 2. And I'm like, well, how the hell do I prioritize? I've got 3 issues that I wanted to discuss, but I've only got time for 2. Okay, well, that doesn't kind of work for me, It's not his fault. He's working under tremendous pressure. I get that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Speaking of only having 2, I'm afraid we've only got a couple of minutes left, and I'm very aware that we do need to, before we lose you, we have to try and squeeze in a couple of things. Number 1, tell us the name of your book, first of all.
Yeah, so my latest book for people who want to understand disordered anxiety is called Untangle Your Anxiety. It's doing really well. It's a UK, US, and Canadian bestseller, and it's got some good feedback actually. Yeah,
I love the way you say that with surprise in your voice.
Yeah,
that's so telling, isn't it?
It's my co-author, like they actually like it.
It's almost like I know what I'm talking about.
Untangle Your Anxiety, fantastic. And then just finally, also, I believe you're involved in a podcast as well. Is there nothing you don't do?
There's a few things.
Probably doesn't
on
a Friday.
A free resource if you want to learn more about disordered anxiety or excessive anxiety. It's called the Panic Pod. We've got 30, 40 episodes out. Some nice guests on there as well. And yeah,
Joshua Fletcher, I have one more question for you. We've still got so much more to talk about. Will you come back to us again?
Yeah, of course.
That would be great.
Excellent stuff. If people
Thank you so much.
Where do they find you if they want more information on you?
Yeah, so mostly on social media. I'm called Anxiety Josh on Twitter. Mostly I do stuff on Instagram because I think it's a good platform, and on Facebook and stuff as well.
Fantastic.
Okay. Brilliant. Well done. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Stuff.
Keep well. There you go. Joshua, I cut him off mid-sentence there. Joshua Fletcher there, thank you very much indeed. Fantastic. Well, now, there's not many people that I would cut Joshua off for, but I have to tell you, when you are connecting all this way away, frankly, it seems only...
You're going from Hertfordshire to South London to Colorado.
Oh, Lord, it's Chantal Rickards. Hi, Chantal.
Hi, hello, good morning, or good lunchtime.
Yeah, it's good afternoon to us, but good morning to you. It looks already very bright where you are, good Lord.
It is 6:30 in the morning. 6:30 in the morning, and the sun is streaming through the windows here.
Crumbs. Well,
6:30, you got up at this time and got made up and everything?
No, I go to sleep looking like this, and then I just wake up.
Okay. Well,
what's curious,
we're stupid enough to believe that as well.
What's curious, though, is that sort of the backdrop sort of reminds me somehow of some sort of hybrid between angelic and clinical. And, of course, we know that neither is very good. But even so, it still looks the part. So there you go.
No, it's a very nice serviced apartment that I'm living in for the next couple of months. It's absolutely lovely, and it's got a great view. So I'm very, very happy and very spoiled.
Is this the famous view of your car park?
The view of the car park is from the office.
I was going to say, you were last week. The car park was the office, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. It was just so fun. If you missed it last week, Chantal on Facebook says, "Here's my view," and I'm expecting the Rockies. So the Rockies like 1 billion miles away, and there's a car park. I'm going to go to Tesco and take a picture of that. What life's really like. Yeah. Hey. So is it? I know you can't tell us what you're doing because not even I know. I haven't the faintest idea. God only knows. It'll be fabulous, though. We know that. Is it going well, whatever it is, secret project?
All going incredibly well. A very interesting project that I'm working on, and I've got lots of great new American colleagues, and we're having a good time. So, yeah, it's all going well. Thank you for asking.
I'm not sure I'm actually speaking to you at the moment, despite your OBE, because you know the one thing I've always wanted to do was to go and see those rock, just an obsession with me, those rock formations. And you posted that arch.
I know.
There is a photo of you next to an arch of rock. And this thing, so there's tiny Chantal. This rock is just humongous and it's stunning. Stunning. Oh my God. It is.
Yeah, it is quite extraordinary. Colorado's, for those that don't know much about it, and I knew nothing about it until 10 days ago when I landed here. It's an extraordinary state. It's a bit sort of hippy-dippy and fun. It was the first state that legalized cannabis. So there are lots of sort of rather cool people here. It's a place where people come to have a lifestyle, to work and have a lifestyle. So, and most of the lifestyle is based around the mountains and walks and hikes. Jeez. And then the further west that you go, so there are wonderful, the start of the Rocky Mountains, wonderful ski resorts in Colorado. And then as you go further west, you get into Utah. And Utah is Salt Lake City is the capital state of Utah. But before you get there, you go through extraordinary desert lands, deserts and canyons, which are, if anything, I think even better than the Grand Canyon.
We've got that here.
Extraordinary rock formations where the earth seems to just have broken and things just burst their way out of the earth's crust. Absolutely extraordinary.
You know what, though, RK, I find this extraordinary, is Chantel is clearly speaking. You were saying about that we've got Croydon for deserts, but I have to tell you that as far as the mountains are concerned, there speaks someone who's never spent a drunken night up Stanmore Hill. That's all I'm saying. Okay, on that note, I think it's only fair that... First, can I just double check? Have you adjusted to the climate yet? You know how you were a bit worried about the altitude stuff.
Actually, it's been okay. As long as you don't go out for a sort of a hard run, you're okay. The air is
Damn
fine.
it. Oh, I've fallen at the first fence. Damn. As you know, that's what I would be doing at 6:30 every morning if I was.
Some people who came with me from overseas have had climate sickness, but actually it's not too bad. It's not too bad.
Do you actually feel, I'm so sorry, I know I kind of asked you last week, do you actually feel, because we hear about it, read about it, do you actually feel physically sick, or you're panting, or what's the deal with being a mile
you just
up?
feel as though you can't quite fill your lungs as much as you normally would. So if you take a very deep breath in, you just don't quite get the capacity that you expect, and that can be a little alarming for some people.
And not to cause dizziness as well.
Indeed, headaches and dizziness, but it goes very quickly.
Now then, there's only one thing that we could possibly move on to.
Hurry up. Hurry up, I'm ready.
Because it's
poised. We're poised.
Oh, yes, we love TV. And there's only one person, no matter where she is in the world, who we would want to talk TV with, Chantel Rickards. What have you found for us this week?
Well, I'll tell you what everybody is talking about here, but also they're talking about it at home too, because I monitor all the British television all the time whilst I'm here. And the big thing this week is Friends, which I don't think we've ever talked about on the show before. But I thought I should mention it because it's one of the biggest television programs ever made. Yes. And there has just been a reunion. And everybody has been waiting about 20 years for this reunion, which was a mishmash of sort of celebrity interviews and bits of recreating old scenes and a sort of chat show in the middle of it hosted by James Corden. And before we get onto the programme itself, that's caused some controversy because a lot of people are very cross that James Corden was the host. I think Americans don't feel that they should have been presented one of their most iconic television programs by a Brit who sort of wasn't around in their lives at the time. It's a very nostalgic program.
But you know why? It's his production company put all this together.
Indeed.
That's why. So talk about jobs for the boys. So you're kind of stuffed because in one hand you should be saying, oh, thank you, James Corden. Words you won't ever hear me say, by the way, unless he opens a door for me in LA one time. I think I can find the toilet myself. So one hand you should be saying thank you very much.
As long as he only held the toilet door, I don't care.
Yeah, that's it. Wash his hands after. For putting it together. And on the other hand, you think, oh Christ, it's James Corden, and he's not the right guy. Anyway, there we are.
Anyway,
have you seen it? Have you seen it?
I've seen bits of the reunion, which I thought was okay, but not brilliant. But it made me want to go back and watch the very first episode because it was brilliant at the time. The finale in 2004 got 52 million viewers. It was absolutely groundbreaking television over here. It wasn't sort of an unknown concept. It was just a sitcom with 6 main characters based around a flat and the coffee bar in New York. Not a particularly novel idea, but actually the writing was beautiful and the interplay between all 6 was absolutely astonishing.
Interestingly, my daughter we're both huge Friends fans, and she slammed it this morning, absolutely slammed it, because they've had and I avoided it for the simple reason I don't like looking back. I want to remember them as they were. I don't want to see Chenand LeBon looking terrible and stumbling over words. I don't want to see the leading ladies with facelifts and everything else, because I just don't want to see it.
Interestingly, it was a show, the writers talked about it being a show that they created around nostalgia, because that time when you're in your first job, you're moving to a new city, you're finding new friends, becomes a very nostalgic thing in the rearview mirror. And so they created that nostalgia effect into the program. And I wanted to see whether the program still stood up 20 years later. Yes, indeed, nearly 20 years later. What's really interesting is that my children watch Friends, and it's had a complete rebirth since streaming, and a whole load of new people have come in to watch it. And the interesting thing is, it absolutely does stand up as a terrific comedy with really good writing. And the first episode and the last episode, 10 years later, you can see the sort of the wonderfulness of the relationship between the actors just gets better and better and better. And they get more and more comfortable in each other's company. So if you haven't seen Friends, and a lot of us didn't first time around, it's really worth going back and just appreciating it for the wonderful lines and the laughter.
It's a brilliant team. It's a brilliant team of writers. And of course, the difference is, as you know, Chantal, because you make TV, I don't. But the difference is, with a British sitcom, an idiot like me would write the script, had no more further to do with it, and the actors and producers and directors would deal with it. Over there, if it doesn't get the laugh, they stop the show. The team of writers, up to 12, 20, usually about 12 writers, not like one bloke sitting alone like me, and they will redo it. They'll go back until they get the right laugh. That's why every gag was just fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, the comedy writing rooms are a thing of wonder. I've had the privilege of sitting in on a couple, and it is absolutely great fun being.
That would be my dream. Yeah. That would be my dream. By the way, loads of people saying thank you to you for recommending Halston. I don't mean the perfume or the dress. I mean the TV series. Ed Grossman. Hi, Chantal. Thanks so much for Halston. The best thing since Queen's Gambit. And Andrea Lucas. I binge watched Halston last week. It was really good. So big thanks to you for recommending that. Seems that people absolutely love it. What else has come? It's very interesting that James. Tell me something like this, because you're right in the heart of it all. There's James Corden against all odds. I mean, he looks unlike like Kimmel or the other one, Jimmy Fallon. They look slim, they're slick. He doesn't. He's British, and he's been a huge success.
Yeah, well,
I don't understand why.
It's interesting you say huge success, because we talk about the success of Friends having got 52 million viewers for their last episode. The Corden show doesn't go out till 12:30 at night. It's called The Late Late Show, and it is late, and not many people watch it. It's watched by about 1.25 million viewers, I think, which is not an enormous number of people.
I had no idea. I thought it was on about 11. No mistake. I thought it was on about 11 o'clock.
No, The Late Show with Stephen Colbert is 11:30, and then The Late Late Show is 12:30.
Chantal, what's the mentality behind that, do you think? Sort of speaking as a TV producer, because I'm not being funny. If I'm trying to create a success, I don't think to myself, I know, I'm going to put this on in the middle of the night when no one can see it.
Well, I think what originally happened was that the main networks here were very conservative. They didn't take risks. They weren't edgy. But what they thought they could do out of hours, out of normal shopping hours, as it were, is on the fringes of the schedule, they could try cheekier, naughtier comedy. And so that's why they pushed these programs, which are basically friendly chat / talk shows, into the later hours. So they would be less offensive to middle America and mass market, and they would find a niche audience late at night. And that's basically what they were there to do, was to add some color to late night.
So his figures, Chantas, is what I'm sorry, I know it's not why you came on, but I'm just fascinated because it's smoke and mirrors. His actual figures out of a country of 350 million people, 1.25 million are watching.
Yeah, but don't forget
that's absolute
that Streaming is incredibly important, and what James does is, I'm sure a lot of your English, British viewers and listeners will know, he does something called carpool karaoke, where he gets a celebrity in a car. It started out with people who were singers in the main, and James, who actually has got a very good voice, would sing along to the music and then would chat to the celebrity at the same time. Clearly that broadened out to become a sort of chat show in its own right. A little mini 8 to 10 minute segment in the program, and those go out on the streaming services. Those are just spread across social media everywhere and have been very successful. Just people like Michelle Obama in the car driving around the White House gardens. So he's done very well with those clips.
When you say it goes out at 12:30, is that East Central? Sorry, it goes out 12:30.
So it goes out, I mean, it's the East Coast is 3 hours ahead of the West Coast. So they just keep moving the time zones across the country. So wherever you are in your bit of the country, you will still get it at 12:30.
Okay, wow. Okay, right, that makes sense.
Can I read something interesting? Because it's right to the heart of Men's Radio Station, and it totally involves you, Shantas. It's this. It's from Paul Claridge, who has much to say on this subject, because sadly he's gone through it. A TV moan. Holby City. Now, I know you're a big Holby City fan. Holby City has for some weeks been running a story about one of the regular characters having an operation, giving a stomacholostomy or ileostomy or colonoscopy, and they have only highlighted the negatives and seemed the character as hating the procedure. Now, the ostomy bag, etc., saved his life. Now, that's all I can read, unfortunately, Phil. I can't read the rest of the subject because it's no, I don't mean that. I'm not censoring myself. It's what comes up on my screen. So
that's fine.
Because Paul Claridge has had this happen to him and it has saved his life, he's obviously, I can understand that, pretty upset.
Okay, so let me sorry, so rather than show the positives of a life-saving procedure, they have only highlighted the negatives and shown the character hating his life. Yes, that does happen, but the fear among the ostomy community is that this storyline may put people off seeking treatment or refusing to have an ileostomy or colonoscopy, which is an interesting point. And this actually kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier on, is about this constant cycle of doom and gloom and negativity on everything is just shocking. It's so unnecessary, so dangerous as well.
I can see that, and I completely understand where Paul is coming from. I used to produce a program for BBC One called City Hospital, which was a live daily show from Southampton General Hospital, fronted by Nick
loved
Knowles.
that show, by the way. Phil absolutely, seriously loved that show.
It was a great show, and it dealt with incredibly serious topics. And
we've had this conversation before with things like 24 Hours in A&E. I mean, there's something about that kind of program which is sensational.
Yeah. But actually what we always were very careful of on City Hospital was making sure that everybody saw the positive side of healthcare, and that even in one's darkest hour, we were trying to get across the idea that one should take one's healthcare very seriously, but keep it uplifting, because our general thought was, if it's very depressing, people won't watch. Whereas actually, if there's a great story that is uplifting, even if it's about somebody who is suffering and possibly even at the end of their life, that there will be something positive that will come out of those stories for other people. So I'm sorry that Paul's felt like that. I can see absolutely why. I can totally understand it. But, the BBC will do what the BBC do, and they presumably think it's more sensational to make it a negative rather than a positive. But they will take that on board because they're listening to the medical community as well.
That's not fair, is it?
If they've gone too far, they'll be told they've gone too far.
Phil, what are you doing?
City Hospital.
Oh, okay. Right.
That was the theme music
very
to
quickly,
City Hospital. Bruce Hornsby in the Range.
That's the way it is, which was also a big Capital Radio show.
It's by Bruce Hornsby, but of course that was taken as the theme for City Hospital, and I remember that. You see, I was paying attention to those years of watching that program.
Can I very quickly bring two things to your attention that I caught last night by complete chance?
Okay.
There was no planning on my
cold.
Pardon?
Did you catch a cold?
You're an idiot. Shut up.
Okay.
Two documentaries that I'd love to bring to your attention, and I just found one was called Pink, It's about the singer Pink, All I Know So Far. And I thought, well, I'll give it 5 minutes. I was transfixed. Absolutely amazing. An incredible human being. Uplifting, because I love to end on a Friday with you, and it's uplifting, it's upbeat. She's an exemplary human being. I just thought she was sensational.
Well, that's worth knowing.
It was good. And the other thing sent me into a absolute fury, and this will interest you. It's called Money Machine, and it's about Las Vegas. And again, I found it by chance. I can't take any credit for being clever about this. And it takes, you remember there was a terrible shooting when a man shot dead 58 people who were attending a rock concert in Las Vegas from the Mandalay Bay.
Correct.
And he injured 850 others.
Yeah.
Okay. And we've always been fed one narrative of this thing. This is a constant theme on men's radio about the truth versus what actually, the version of the truth. And this documentary just shows you what really happened. It's a shocker. It's extraordinary. It's beautifully made.
Yep.
It's dispassionate. You feel that you're right there. And at the end of it, you think, it's just so corrupt.
Which channel is it on, Russ?
It was on. I'm trying to look. I think it's Amazon Prime. I think it's just on Amazon.
I shall look out.
It's called. Let's see if I can get this up. That's called Money Machine. That's the one there.
And usually
the pink one is this. The pink one is great, and I didn't know much about her music. I knew nothing about her. Recommend it. It's great.
And if I may say what I have been watching this week, because unbelievably enough, I've managed to shoehorn in a bit of television this week, which doesn't happen very much anymore. But I have discovered, and Chantal, you're probably going to be very cross with me because you probably mentioned this weeks ago and I never got around to it, so I'm only too apologetic if you have. White House Farm.
Well, we have talked about it before, but some time ago, actually.
It wasn't time ago, wasn't it? Yes.
I finally got round to watching it. Good grief, it was incredible.
Yeah, very good. It's on the ITV player for those that want to catch up with it. I think it's a 3-parter. And the true life story.
Yeah, it's also on Netflix as well. It's those who remember the murder, the chap Jeremy Bamber, who was the White House Farm murderer. It just
is it a documentary? Is it a dramatized version of what happened? Okay, all right.
Incredible.
Great.
Yeah,
right.
Very, very good, worth watching. Well, something else.
Okay.
No, I was going to say something else that I've pulled out of the archive, but fairly recent archive and absolutely worth watching. Didn't get a lot of exposure in the UK, but in America was a massive hit. And it's a 3-series drama called True Detective. And the first series was with Matthew McConaughey, which is always difficult to say, and Woody Harrelson as 2 cops in Louisiana. And then the second series has Colin Farrell and Rachel McAdams. And then the third series has Mahershala Ali and Carmen Ejogi. And they're all cops of different types in different places. So they're 3 discrete series, 10-parters in each, but extremely well made with absolutely
terrific
A-class American talent. But very, very well written. And for anybody who missed them, because you might have missed them at the time, it started in 2014, and then there was a sort of odd sequence in which they were played out, but really worth going back to watch. Those are on Netflix at the moment.
It was the twins who put me onto that. Our twins. And I didn't realise, and thank you again, because I didn't realise there was series 3. Series 1 and 2, sensational. I mean, really that good. Absolutely that good. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I'm very sad to learn actually this week that there was a series that I watched on Netflix ages and ages ago, and it was such a brilliant series called Hollywood. Don't know if you remember me talking about this. Now, Hollywood, to those who haven't seen it yet, is basically about the dawn of the golden age of Hollywood. The characters, by and large, are based on real actors that we all know and love now. A lot of them, I think they're sort of mixed in with some fictional as well. I don't believe everyone is true to life. It's sort of a real hybrid. I think it's the way they put it is it's inspired by true life. That's the way they put it. And it is, it's such an American.
Sounds like one of Chantel's dinner parties. They're inspired by true life.
But all I know is that I was reading because I thought to myself, surely we are about due another series of Hollywood, because this came out. I think this was released probably about the beginning of last year. I thought surely it's about time now that they're going to release another series. I have just read this week that although there are plans to potentially bring out another series, due to obviously everything of the pandemic, it is a very strong chance we will have to wait until the end of 2022 before they bring it out. I'm mortified. But anyway, hopefully it'll be worth the wait.
Technical question for you, OBE person. Okay, we've got very used. No, it's a serious question. We've got, and I'm thinking particularly of Mayor of Easttown. Is this right? We've got very used to be able to binge watch. That's my thing. I like to get, if I think that the series is good, boom, I'll sit there till 4 a.m. and enjoy the whole thing as an immersive experience.
Yeah.
Now we're being drip fed like the old methodology we all grew up with of once a week. So Kate Winslet, who's stunning as Mayor of Easttown, is that going to be? Are they going to go back to that old method, or are they going to keep with the binge watching?
They can't go backwards forever because everybody is now used to a completely different viewing pattern. But the channels have to remind us occasionally to affiliate ourselves with a particular channel. And this is Sky's way of making themselves more sticky in our lives, just making sure that we remember this Sky has put money into this. It's an HBO production, I think, but it's basically Sky putting a stake in the ground, saying, remember that great drama is right here, and we're going to make you watch it on our channel to remind you every week that it's on Sky Television.
Because I was thinking about, because I raved about it, and everyone's like, oh, I can't binge watch it. Everyone's moaning on Facebook. I'm not in charge here, you know. Yeah. But it was interesting because it was the same thing with Line of Duty. Oh God, suddenly it's Sunday night at the London Palladium all over again. We've got an appointment viewing situation, which we've got out of the habit.
Yeah. Sometimes it'll be because if it's, as with Mayor of Easttown, which is great, and I'm keeping up with it on a weekly basis, if it's being played out weekly in America, they won't let it be played out in a block in another territory. So the territories will have to do what is done in the main production country.
But just to be clear, you can catch up. So in other words, you can binge watch up to the point before the latest episode has been aired.
Correct.
You can't jump ahead of everybody.
Yeah. So I think Mayor of Easttown. Yeah, I think Mayor of Easttown is on week 4 now, possibly week 5.
No, this is week 7.
Week 7. Oh gosh, I'm behind.
It's a 7-part series.
Right.
I had a wonderful conversation with somebody that said, yeah, the ending was great. I said, it hasn't finished. What? I said, no, that wasn't the ending. There's another 3 episodes. Oh, so because there was a point where you thought, oh, boom, that's the end.
Chantel, you are forgiven though, because there's something like silly like 7 o'clock in the morning for you. So technically you are behind. So it's understandable.
I'm a bit behind, yeah.
Might I request that sort of, given that we only have a matter of minutes left, what else have you found? What else should we be watching?
Okay, so I know that your viewers and listeners love Long Lost Family. So just as a quick aide-memoire, the new series, Long Lost Family, What Happened Next, is back on ITV. So don't miss that. I think it's week 2, possibly week 3, but really worth watching. If you want a really silly drama, and I want to emphasize it is absolutely silly stuff, but rather like last week's Saturday afternoon, put your feet up, silly film. There's a film called Long Shot with Seth Rogen and Charlize Theron, which is actually on the BBC iPlayer, and it's much better than you might imagine. It's very silly, it's very nonsensical, but it's a lovely sort of rom-com, slightly old-fashioned rom-com between 2 people that you would never expect in the same sentence, let alone the same bed, but really worth watching. So those are 2 sort of fun things. And of course, Hospital is on BBC One, started in the middle of May. It's, I think we're up to series 7, actually, of Hospital, filmed at Coventry General Hospital, and really worth watching. A documentary, but great to see what's been going on inside the NHS whilst we've all been in lockdown.
Chantal, can I just pick your brains for 2 seconds on one thing very quickly with you? Something like Long Lost Family. They were doing also another program this week, which I think was a 2-part special over 2 nights called Long Lost Family, Born Without a Trace.
Yep.
In case you're unfamiliar with what that is, this is following the story of those who are foundlings. A foundling is someone who was abandoned as a baby with absolutely no paper trail whatsoever. So their only hope of finding relatives is through DNA. It is an interesting program. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I found it a little bit, I don't want to give too much away. It was worth watching, but I found it a little bit disappointing because the nature of sort of the foundlings is that you almost be forgiven for thinking that the parents don't want to be found. That's kind of the point of abandoning them. So it doesn't always work out in their favor, if you see what I mean. I think it's a bit disappointing. I think it's because we've been so spoiled with Long Lost Family and the way it normally works that you just kind of expect that sort of same emotional connection, should we say, with the program.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I get that, but it is another side of that story. And there are people out there who don't know who their parents are. And it must be, sort of mentally distressing for those people. So
horrendous, but so worth watching. Brilliant. Well, that's Long Lost Family. That's on ITV Hub now. Chantal, thank you so much.
Thank you for getting up at the crack of what.
Yeah. We'll see you soon. Hopefully, stay safe.
Very soon. Take care. Have a great weekend.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Look at that. Fantastic.
All the way live from Colorado.
Oh,
Denver, Colorado, for goodness sake. How fantastic is that?
Well, I tell you what's also fantastic is every single one of the guests today, honest to God, can we just say thank you very much to Henry Blofeld, OBE, Dames on the Road, it's just amazing. Thank you very much as well to Jay McKeague, Joshua Fletcher, Chantal Rickards. Thank you very much for your comments as well. We really appreciate it. Very much.
Been great. You are, of course, the key part of the show because without you, we don't really have a show. And we love bouncing off you. We will be back on. If you missed any part of the show, just go to the YouTube channel and you'll find us there. And we'll all be there and you can watch it at your leisure.
See
we'll be back on Monday.
Bye.